It was past noon. The late spring wind carried the restless heat of summer, stirring the leaves into a continuous rustle. Ling Yun drove the carriage while Mu rode a pure black horse alongside it. Ling Xin would handle the aftermath in the mountains, leading the group to escort the weapons to Cangzhou. The carriage cabin was spacious enough for 2 adults to lie down comfortably. Inside the carriage, only the prince and Mu Lan were present. She sat on a thick sheepskin blanket while a low table holding a tea set and a book separated them. The prince sat opposite her. Mu Lan wondered whether the two of them would really sit in the carriage all the way to Cangzhou, staring awkwardly at each other. The thought alone made her uneasy. "Prince, I want to ride a horse." Mu Lan lifted the carriage curtain and looked outside, envying Mu for being able to ride. "Do you dislike being with me?" The prince seemed to understand her discomfort in the carriage, and he was equally unsettled. He had never been alone with a woman at such close distance, and his nervous hand had grown damp with sweat. Mu Lan answered defensively, "And no, I only want to ride a horse." Seeing her stubborn attempt to hide her embarrassment amused the prince, and his tension suddenly eased. "You may ride once your injury is healed." Mu Lan felt that he was soothing her as though she were a child. She retorted, "I only injured my shoulder. It will not affect my riding." The prince asked, "Do you really want to ride?" His tone suggested that he would let her ride if she truly said yes. Mu Lan nodded. "I really want to ride." The prince called to Ling Yun. Ling Yun stopped the carriage. Ling Yun pulled the reins and began bringing it to a halt. "Whoa!" Ling Yun pulled the reins and brought the carriage to a steady stop. He did not ask why. He had heard the entire conversation from outside. "Prince." After securing the carriage, Ling Yun lowered the step and stood beside it, holding a whip in one hand and lifting the curtain with the other. The prince stepped down first and stood beside the carriage. "If you want to ride, then come down." Mu Lan had not expected him to agree and was delighted that he truly intended to let her ride. Mu Lan looked out and saw the prince already extending his hand to help her down. Since only her shoulder was injured, she declined and stepped down by herself using the carriage step. After Mu Lan came down, the prince said to Mu, who was mounted nearby, "Mu, go sit in the carriage and give me the horse." Mu dismounted efficiently. He had wanted to ride in the carriage for some time, so he handed over the reins and turned to climb inside. The prince led the horse to Mu Lan, and she used her strength and lightness to mount smoothly. Once seated, Mu Lan reached for the reins, but the prince moved his hand away. A moment later, she felt him settle behind her. He had mounted and enclosed her in his arms from behind. The warmth of the prince's breath brushed her neck as he breathed softly. He leaned near her ear and said, "I will take you." Mu Lan's heartbeat quickened. Her body stiffened, her face grew hot, and her breathing became unsteady. Ling Yun was briefly surprised by what he saw, but quickly recovered and urged the carriage forward. Mu had not yet settled inside the carriage when the sudden movement threw him against its wall. Mu Lan regained her senses at his shout and tried to lean forward, creating more distance from the prince. That hurts." She had pulled at her wound and regretted wanting to ride. The prince immediately warned her, "Do not move around. You are still injured." The prince held her firmly in place while speaking in a serious tone. Mu Lan lowered her head, afraid he would notice the unnatural blush on her face, and stared ahead without daring to look around. Her hands were lightly damp with sweat from nervousness, and she did not realize that the flush had spread from her neck to the tips of her ears. The prince's eyes remained fixed on her profile, unable to look away. After a long moment, he let out a quiet sigh, and the corner of his mouth lifted in an unseen smile. With a shout to urge the horse onward, the prince wrapped both arms around her and tightened his hold on the reins, pursuing Ling Yun's carriage. As the horse ran, Mu Lan's soft hair streamed through the prince's face, gentle enough to make his heart tremble. The prince paused for a moment, a carefree smile appearing on his lips. Then he accelerated, causing Mu Lan to lean back toward him as the faint fragrance of gardenia once again reached him. Mu Lan soon calmed herself. She reminded herself that this was an ancient world, and that as a prince he would have many women. She worked hard to convince herself not to care. Riding the same horse meant nothing, she told herself. As a medical student, she had seen everything. That was all there was to it, and she refused to argue with herself any further. Before long, she had convinced herself. She began to admire the scenery along the way. The weather was pleasantly mild, making the ride comfortable. Warm sunlight rested on her, and she grew a little drowsy. Gradually she relaxed. Her head bobbed gently, and she unconsciously found support behind her, leaning back until she fell asleep against him. Whoa. They arrived at Qingshui County and prepared to stay there for the night. Mu Lan realized that she had actually fallen asleep on horseback with her back against the prince. Mu Lan thought she must be dreaming. Yes, she had to be dreaming, as she had not truly woken yet. She slapped her cheeks, trying to clear her mind. You are not getting down. The prince had already dismounted and saw Mu Lan staring blankly and patting her face. Oh, I am coming down. The prince helped her off the horse and handed the reins to Ling Yun. Mu Lan then walked with him into the inn. Mu had already instructed the inn staff in the dining hall to serve them food and to send another meal to their rooms after they had finished eating. After eating, they returned to their separate rooms. The inn staff had delivered hot water, so Mu Lan did not enter her private space to bathe. Because of her injury, she simply washed with a towel. Knock knock. Who is it? After checking that her clothes were neat, she rose to open the door. Mu Lan found the prince standing outside with a tray holding white cotton cloth and a bottle of medicine. I came to apply the medicine. His hand tightened around the tray and the tips of his fingers reddened slightly. Well, thank you. She reached out with her left hand to take the medicine. It is inconvenient for you to apply it yourself. I will do it. The prince pulled the tray slightly back. All right, thank you. She decided to regard him as a doctor treating a patient and turned toward the room. Mu Lan sat on the bed wondering whether the prince had also applied her medicine when she was unconscious instead of Mu. While her thoughts wandered, the prince closed the door and came over to sit beside her. Mu Lan carefully loosened her clothing only enough to expose the injured shoulder. The prince merely needed to change the dressing, yet his solemn concentration made the atmosphere tense. Soon the prince finished changing her dressing, and both of them quietly exhaled in relief. Rest early. He quickly took the tray and left. After calming herself for a while, Mu Lan stepped forward and secured the door latch. Mu Lan slipped into her private space. Needing to calm herself, she went to the fields and used her spiritual power to harvest the grain she had planted earlier, now fully mature. At the beginning of the high hour, Mu Lan not only harvested the mature grain, but also replanted the empty fields with grain seeds. She continued until her spiritual power was exhausted, then returned to her room and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Mu Lan appeared in the inn's main hall from upstairs, looking as though she had not slept enough. The Prince Mu and Ling Yun were already seated there having breakfast. Good morning, Prince. Good morning, Mu and Ling Yun. Come and sit down for breakfast. They all instinctively ignored the awkwardness of changing her bandages the night before. Seeing Mu Lan's pale, sleepy face, Mu teased her with a knowing look. Ling Yun merely glanced at her, then lowered his head and continued eating the bun in his hand. Mu Lan thought Ling Yun was truly a man of few words, which made her think of Guizhi. She answered Mu casually, giving the simplest excuse she could. I am not used to the room at the inn. I cannot sleep well in unfamiliar beds. If she told them she had spent the whole night farming, they would never believe her. After Mu Lan sat down, the prince served her a bowl of porridge and placed it in front of her. Eat quickly. After breakfast, you can continue sleeping in the carriage. Mu Lan might not have been fully awake, but she took food seriously. Having survived the apocalypse, she treasured every meal. She picked up a steamed bun and ate it with great concentration, savoring every bite. Watching her eat, Mu felt as though the bun in his hand was somehow different from the one she was eating. He reached for the buns in front of Mu Lan, but the quick-handed prince moved the entire plate away before he could take one. Prince, that is so stingy. How could she possibly finish so many? Huh, I can finish them. Mu Lan deliberately provoked him. There were only 5 buns on the plate after all, and she really could finish them. Fine. You have the prince protecting you, so of course you can do whatever you like. Mu rolled his eyes at her. He stopped trying to take the buns. He had only wanted to taste one, because she made them look so delicious. After Mu Lan finished breakfast, the group continued their journey. The prince read a book inside the carriage while she climbed in and went back to sleep. The 4 of them traveled toward Sangzhou by carriage during the day. At night, they sometimes stayed at inns, and when they could not reach one in time, they camped outdoors. Sometimes they hunted small game for food. During one passage through a town, Mu Lan bought several storybooks from a bookshop and read them in the carriage. When she grew tired of drawing and reading in the carriage, Mu Lan would let her consciousness enter her hidden space. There, using her spiritual power, she harvested the crops and planted new seeds. In the blink of an eye 10 days passed, and they had traveled halfway to Sangzhou. The weather grew hotter and hotter. It had been more than 2 months since the last rain back in late March. The closer Mu Lan came to Sangzhou, the hotter each day felt. She was grateful to be wearing men's clothing instead of the layered garments women had to wear, otherwise she would never have endured the heat. At night, when she was alone, she slept only in her inner garments, rolling up her trousers and sleeves so she could bear the heat. During the day she stayed inside the carriage and rarely went out. The carriage had become hers alone because 2 people inside it were too hot, so the prince rode ahead on horseback. When Ling Yun stopped to draw water along the road, he found that the river was nearly dry. Refugees had already begun appearing by the roadside, asking passers-by for help. When their carriage passed through a village, a disorderly mixture of voices came from outside: arguments, crying, and anxious discussion. "Mother, do not sell Dia. She already knows how to work. Let go of me. If Dia is not sold, where will the money come from to buy grain for my eldest grandson? Mother, that grandmother is too cruel. Dia is already 10 years old. In another 2 years, she could marry, yet she is being sold now." Exactly. Some people agreed. Others stood aside and judged without understanding, saying that a girl could at least be exchanged for grain. Curious Mu Lan lifted the carriage curtain and looked outside. A crowd had gathered, and although she could not see the center, she heard that people were discussing the sale of a child. Mu Lan had spent these days recovering inside the carriage and had seen almost nothing of the outside world. It was too hot, so she usually left the carriage only after they reached an inn. Even when they camped outdoors, Ling Yun chose suitable places for them to stay. Without Mu Lan knowing, the prince had forbidden Ling Yun and Mu from telling her about the refugees, hoping to spare her worry, because he knew how compassionate she was. Mu Lan looked around. It was not only hot, many of the trees beside the road had already wilted. Mu, when did this happen? I stayed in the carriage during the day, and in only a few days the outside has become like this. Mu inwardly complained that the prince had forbidden him from mentioning it to her, but he still answered only in the past few days. Just as the prince had expected, once Mu Lan learned that there had been no rain for 2 months and that many people had run out of grain, she fell silent. Mu Lan lowered the carriage curtain and did not ask Ling Yun to stop. The prince had assumed that seeing such a scene would move her to buy the girl. Mu Lan had no intention of bringing the girl back with her. Behind the lowered curtain, she was not thinking of anyone else. She was considering what she should do if the disaster became even worse. She had so much grain in her hidden space. Could she really keep it all while watching the people suffer? As they traveled, Mu Lan kept looking outside from time to time. Do not keep looking. It will only make you feel worse. Riding beside the carriage, the prince reached over and lowered the curtain she had lifted. Mu Lan remained silent, turning the problem over in her mind countless times and imagining 100 solutions only to reject them all. The Prince Mu and Ling Yun clearly saw that Mu Lan grew quieter each day and assumed she was worried about the refugees. The farther they traveled toward Sangzhou, the worse the drought became, and large groups of refugees now appeared along the road. The refugees were not coming from the direction of Sangzhou. Although that region was also suffering from drought, they seemed to have been driven here from neighboring Izhou. Wu Commandery City on the route toward the capital had closed its gates. Everyone could only travel toward Sangzhou. Someone was deliberately forcing the refugees in that direction. That day they stopped beneath a place shaded by trees. Prince Ling Feng has sent a message. Ling Yun handed a note to the prince. After reading it, the prince told Mu Lan, "We must abandon the carriage and continue on horseback. We need to hurry to Sangzhou." Mu Lan did not look at the note, but the prince handed it to her. She read the note. Its general meaning was that people from Beiyang had begun raiding villages near Sangzhou for grain and abducting women, and that the prince was urgently summoned to return. "Prince, I can manage." Mu Lan understood the seriousness of the situation, and her shoulder had nearly recovered. The 4 of them mounted their horses and rode at full speed for several days. They were close to the territory of Sangzhou City and would arrive in half a day. The blazing sun scorched the land until it cracked, while the fields yielded nothing, and the people suffered from hunger and cold. Mu Lan saw bodies thin from hunger, undernourished children, frail elderly people, and everything ruined by famine. In her heart, she made a decision, one she would carry out only after reaching the city. At the north gate of Sangzhou, the prince and his party rode hard to reach the north gate, but it was closed. Outside the gate, many famine refugees wandered about, so many that their horses could not even pass through. Seeing this situation, the prince guessed that something had happened in the military camp. Ling Yun, go and see what is going on, he ordered. Yes, my lord. Ling Yun dismounted and walked toward the city gate. In a moment, he returned with news from the gate. My lord, General Chu Fan has ordered the north gate closed. Without his command, no one dares to open it. We cannot enter the city now. The prince pondered for a moment. We will enter after dark. They found a secluded grove and rested, waiting for nightfall to slip into the city. Sangzhou had 4 gates, but riding from one gate to another would take a full day. They could only wait for darkness to enter the city under cover of night. The prince saw refugees at the gate, ragged and starving, the scene too terrible to behold. With the gate closed, he could only wonder what horrors lay within. Before leaving Sangzhou, he had divided the 2,000 troops among 4 deputy generals, Chu Gusong and Shi. He never expected Chu Fan to secretly defect to the imperial brother, leaving him in such a precarious position. After the 9th prince was demoted to commoner status, Chu Fan was appointed Grand General of the Cavalry and took control of Sangzhou. Now, with the severe drought striking the city, he wondered whether Chu Fan had reported the crisis to the court and requested disaster relief funds. Mu Lan was not burdened with the prince's complex worries. Instead, she was focused on finding a way to distribute the grain from her spatial storage to the starving people without revealing its existence. As dusk settled, the prince and his companions tethered their horses in the woods and made their way along the city walls, searching for an unguarded section to scale using lightness skill. Mu Lan brought up the rear, using her spiritual power to store the horses in her spatial dimension. In these times of scarcity, nothing should be wasted. The prince glanced back as if sensing something, but seeing nothing, he turned and continued forward. Phew! Mu Lan breathed a sigh of relief. She had feared the prince had discovered her secret, but she hadn't anticipated his keen awareness. He could sense things even from such a distance. She would need to be more careful in the future. Ling Yun led them for quite a while before finding a suitable spot. He scaled the wall first, scanned the area above, and then signaled to the prince below that it was safe to climb up. Mu Lan understood Ling Yun's signal and was about to use her lightness skill to leap up when the prince swept her into his arms, springing lightly from the ground. In an instant, they soared over the wall and landed safely within the city. Mu witnessed the prince carrying Mu Lan over the wall, then approached with his arms crossed, speaking in a voice meant only for them. Defying all caution, Mu whispered teasingly into the prince's ear, "My lord, you're getting quite skilled at taking advantage of Miss Mu, aren't you?" Mu hadn't forgotten that Mu Lan had asked the prince for a document releasing her from concubine obligations. He had heard the entire exchange clearly from outside the door that day. The prince ground his teeth, thinking this was yet another day he wanted to eliminate Mu. He had noticed these past days that Mu Lan was avoiding him, even refusing his help with applying medicine to her back. During the hot weather, she had driven him out of the carriage under the pretext that it was too stifling, forcing him to ride alongside instead. He wondered when a prince of his stature had fallen to accommodating a young woman so completely, yet he had done so willingly. All of them skilled in martial arts, they moved across the rooftops under cover of darkness. They arrived at a large mansion courtyard and stopped. 5 main rooms faced the courtyard with 3 rooms flanking each side. The central room appeared to be the main hall, lit by candlelight, and through the windows they could see someone inside. The prince stepped into the room first. The occupants were startled by his sudden entrance, but once they recognized him, the 2 immediately bowed and greeted him. The prince hastened to help them up. "Rise, old Gu. No need for such formalities." Peering from behind the prince, Mu Lan spotted an elderly man with white hair and wise eyes past 50 alongside someone she recognized, Ling Feng. Mu Lan did not recognize the white-haired elder, but having heard the prince address him as old Gu, he must be the Duke Xingua. "Greetings, Duke Gu." Though unfamiliar with her, Mu Lan had always held those who defended their country in high esteem, so she offered him her respects. "Hello." General Gu, of course, did not know Mu Lan either, but one does not rebuff a friendly greeting, so he responded with a perfunctory acknowledgement. After exchanging pleasantries with General Gu, the prince began inquiring about the current situation in Sangzhou. Ling Feng then provided a detailed report to the prince covering the past several months. Mu Lan had no interest in the military matters being discussed. She sat beside the prince, and as she listened she grew drowsy. Before long, Ling Feng's report had lulled her to sleep against her chair. By the time Ling Feng finished his report, the prince turned to Mu Lan and discovered she had fallen asleep leaning against the chair. He was almost impressed she could sleep through such noise. That's all for tonight. Ling Feng see General Gu back to his quarters. My lord, no need to see me out. General Gu bowed and took his leave. Yes. Ling Feng followed General Gu out. Once everyone had departed, the prince picked up Mu Lan and carried her to the adjacent room. The next morning, Mu Lan woke and stared blankly at the unfamiliar ceiling. Recalling the previous night, she remembered falling asleep to Ling Feng's report. She must have been carried here by the prince. She sat up and looked around. The bedside table held a set of new clothes, and without needing to ask, she could guess who had prepared them for her. Honestly, even in modern times, who could resist such a thoughtful and handsome boyfriend without falling completely captivated? Unfortunately, this was the ancient world where men could have multiple wives and concubines, something she deeply disliked. Mu Lan changed into the clothes the prince had prepared for her, an indigo blue gauze garment embroidered with cloud and auspicious patterns. She opened the door and found two young women dressed as maids waiting outside. Upon seeing her, they both bowed in unison. This servant is Lung Yue, and this one is Lung Ling. We greet you, Miss Mu. Lung Yu noticed Mu Lan's confusion and explained, we were summoned by the prince before he left the mansion to serve you, Miss Mu. The prince mentioned he has matters to attend to and has granted you free passage throughout the residence. Take me to the dining hall. I'd like to have breakfast. Since the prince had arranged for them to attend to her, and she was unfamiliar with the mansion, she decided to keep them for now. Please follow us, Miss Mu. Lung Yu led the way while Lung Ling followed behind Mu Lan, escorting her through the mansion to the dining hall. Mu Lan followed slowly behind Lung Yu toward the dining hall. The weather outside was sweltering with nothing worth seeing. Just a moment, this servant will fetch your breakfast. Lung Yu and Lung Ling departed. Even this short walk had her sweating. The heat was oppressive. Mu Lan was still contemplating how to find someone trustworthy to help distribute the grain from her spatial storage to the starving refugees both inside and outside the city. Once Lung Yu and Lung Ling brought her breakfast from the kitchen, she finished quickly and dismissed them to their duties before heading out alone toward the mansion gate. Mu Lan walked through several streets within Sangzhou City. The city suffered from severe shortages of clothing and food, with emaciated skeletal figures everywhere. Malnourished children, sickly elderly, and places ravaged by famine filled the streets. The streets had grown dangerous and chaotic. Famine had driven people to short-sightedness and greed. Mu Lan dared not take out grain recklessly, fearing a mob would swarm her. She had no one around her she could rely on. Mu Lan's brows were tightly furrowed as though bearing the weight of 1,000 caddies, revealing the heaviness and unease within her heart. Walking alone down the street, her gaze profound and distant, she harbored unspoken troubles. Bang! Oh! A bruised and battered man was kicked out of an alleyway. Young Master Song, you came alone today. Now that you're in our hands, who's going to come save you? The speaker was extremely arrogant. Then a man in luxurious brocade, accompanied by 3 servants-like attendants, emerged from the alley wielding staffs, appearing to be with the same man who had just spoken. Mu Lan did not immediately intervene, but stood quietly to the side. Not yet understanding what was happening or the reason behind it, she decided not to act rashly. Chu Erle, you despicable wretch. Bullying someone because you have the numbers. What kind of man are you? If you're so capable, face me in a one-on-one duel. Chu Erle shamelessly replied, I would never duel you alone. He turned to his men. All of you go up there and beat him mercilessly. I want to settle the grudge I took from his second brother. Chu Erle, you only dare to take your anger out on me. If you're so brave, go find my second brother. The young Master Song on the ground was on the verge of tears. Tisk. So it turned out he couldn't beat the older brother and was taking it out on the younger one. Mu Lan looked down on them with disdain. She also recalled that the man's surname was Chu, and she seemed to have heard Ling Feng mention the Chu family the night before, the newly appointed general of the Imperial Cavalry. Mu Lan approached the man surnamed Chu and asked, what is your relationship with General Chu? Chu Erle saw Mu Lan's delicate appearance and assumed she was meddlesome. He dismissed her with contempt. None of your business. Go away and stay out of this lest you get splattered with blood. Young Master Song lying on the ground warned Mu Lan. Chu Fun is his eldest uncle. You should leave quickly. Despite his circumstances, the young man, surnamed Song, proved to have a good heart, still thinking to warn her first. Mu Lan's first impression of the man surnamed Chu was unfavorable. From what Ling Feng had told her, this General Chu had already pledged allegiance to the emperor, and now he held absolute authority over all of Songzhou. Now, with so many refugees flooding in from both inside and outside the city, he not only refused to open his granaries to relieve the famine, but had also locked the refugees outside the city walls. Upon learning that Chu Erla and Chu Fin were from the same family, Mu Lan felt this was a matter she could intervene in. She turned to the young Master Song on the ground and asked, "What is your relationship with Colonel Song?" Young Master Song, in pain, simply lay flat and murmured, "Colonel Song Nanqing is my second brother." He continued, "Chu Erla was humiliated by my brother in the military camp and is taking it out on me. Could you do me a favor and pass a message to my second brother? I prefer the Xinfeng wine from Yongqing Street. Remind him to buy some for me at this time every year." Mu Lan chuckled. This fellow was quite amusing. His personality was like a playful husky. "Don't worry, you won't die. Just remember to treat me to that Xinfeng wine later." Mu Lan turned to Chu Erla and declared, "Young Master Song is under my protection today. Leave." Upon hearing Mu Lan say she would protect him, young Master Song realized she knew martial arts. Forgetting his pain, he quickly scrambled to his feet and darted behind Mu Lan for shelter. His misfortune stemmed from never learning martial arts. His second brother had urged him to train, but he couldn't endure the hardship. Instead, he preferred learning commerce from his eldest brother. Chu Erla, enraged that no one had ever dared to defy him, ordered his servants to attack. Mu Lan gently pushed young Master Song behind her. His presence was hindering her movements. The four servants, following their young master's command, surrounded Mu Lan, attempting to trap her in the center. Mu Lan allowed them to close in, but before they could fully encircle her, she singled out the closest servant, snatched the staff from his hands, and delivered a sharp slap to his face. These servants clearly possessed no martial arts skills. Their footing was as unsteady as their incompetent young masters, relying solely on numbers. Against anyone else, they would have been no match. Mu Lan then used the staff in her hand to disarm the remaining servants one by one, striking each of them in turn. Seeing Mu Lan handle the servants so effortlessly, young Master Song picked up a fallen staff from the ground and joined the fray. He wanted revenge. Previously, this man had wielded a staff and struck him with lethal force. Now it was time to return the favor. Young Master Chu, seeing his servants swiftly defeated by Mu Lan, realized the situation was dire and turned to flee. Young Master Song attempted to give chase, but Mu Lan stopped him. "You can't defeat him. Let's leave quickly before he returns with reinforcements, and we're trapped." "Oh, all right." He was now entirely obedient to Mu Lan, who was his savior. As they walked, Song Nanqing asked, "My name is Song Nanqing. How should I address you, benefactor?" "Lan Sanmu," Mu Lan replied without hesitation. She was accustomed to using this name while dressed as a man. Song Nanqing tentatively asked, "Lord Lan, you saved my life. May I treat you to a meal?" He feared Mu Lan might refuse. In Songzhou City, he had no friends. His eldest brother was skilled in commerce, his second brother in martial arts, while he possessed no talents at all. He worried Mu Lan would look down on him. Mu Lan glanced sideways at him, noticing his cautious demeanor. "Very well," she agreed. Unfamiliar with Songzhou City herself, she readily accepted the offer of a local companion. "Lord Lan, I'll take you to the Taoyuan restaurant on Yongqing Street for some wine." Song Nanqing spoke as though he had found a kindred spirit, introducing her to the place. Mu Lan found his bruised and swollen face amusing and sighed at his carefree nature. In truth, this body of hers was even younger than Song Nanqing's. They seemed to be peers. Walking alongside Song Nanqing, Mu Lan felt her own mindset growing younger. It seemed that one's disposition inevitably shifted to match those around them. Soon Song Nanqing led her to Yongqing Street and found the Taoyuan restaurant. It was remarkable that a restaurant could survive amid such widespread famine, suggesting its owner possessed considerable influence. Song Nanqing led Mu Lan into the restaurant. The main hall was nearly empty. With the famine, few could afford such meals. Acting as though it were his own establishment, Song Nanqing called out to the waiter, find us a quiet private room. I'm treating a distinguished guest today. Certainly, young Master Song. This way, please. The waiter was well accustomed to young Master Song's frequent visits for a drink and knew exactly how to attend to him. Song Nanxing gave the waiter familiar instructions, the usual dishes, but bring 2 extra jars of wine today. Lord Lan, you're not from Zhangzhou, are you? Song Nanxing wished to learn more about Mu Lan, feeling they had already become friends. No, I'm not. I came here for business, but unexpectedly encountered the drought outside the city and cannot leave. Mu Lan and Song Nanxing exchanged stories, some true and some fabricated, while also learning about the current situation in Zhangzhou City. Shortly, the waiter brought the ordered dishes and the Xinfeng wine to the private room. Lord Lan, where do you reside? After their meal, Song Nanxing wished to escort Mu Lan back. Mu Lan momentarily forgot that she had not yet rented a place. She could not mention the prince's mansion. I'm staying at an inn for now, she replied casually. Song Nanxing then reminded her that she would need to rent a house, especially if she intended to distribute grain. At the West Market brokerage in Zhangzhou City, Mu Lan and Song Nanxing exited the tavern. She headed straight for the West Market that Song Nanxing had mentioned. He had told her that the brokerage's shopkeeper was a man of integrity, and if she wished to purchase a residence and servants, she could go there. Song Nanxing had originally intended to accompany her, but Mu Lan, seeing his bruised and swollen face, told him to first visit a medical clinic for treatment. She could manage on her own. Now that the power dynamics in Zhangzhou City were unclear, she could not think of any immediate solution. She could not distribute porridge as she had done in the capital city. The prince had just returned to Zhangzhou City and was now a commoner. The city was ostensibly under the command of General Chu. The prince had left the residence early in the morning, and she did not wish to trouble him. She would handle her own affairs. Distributing porridge in Zhangzhou would not only cause chaos, but also risk exposing herself. She decided to first purchase a residence and a few servants, then plan her next move. Mu Lan arrived at the West Market brokerage. As she entered, a clerk came forward to greet her. Young master, please come in. Are you looking to buy servants, or a house, or shop? The clerk greeted her warmly, but inwardly hoped she would buy people. With the drought, there were many people willing to sell themselves into servitude, as long as they were fed. Mu Lan said calmly, I want to buy a house, and also pick some capable servants. When the shopkeeper heard that she intended to purchase both a residence and servants, he came forward to attend to her personally. The shopkeeper asked politely, May I ask, young master, what kind of residence you have in mind? A 3-courtyard house would be fine. Mu Lan thought that the front courtyard could be used for the master's quarters, while the rear could serve as a warehouse for grain. And I need a few servants with some martial arts skills, a steward, and a cook. First, she would pick a few skilled individuals, and then have them gradually search for more suitable people. Mu Lan could not handle trivial matters, but she had money, so she could let others do the work. The servants she bought would have their contracts in her hands, so she had no fear of betrayal. The shopkeeper instructed the clerk to go out and summon candidates according to Mu Lan's requirements, so she could make her selection. The shopkeeper in turn brought the deeds of the houses to Mu Lan, first telling her which locations and streets each property was on, then allowing her to choose slowly. During the meal at the tavern, Mu Lan had casually inquired about the situation in Zhangzhou City from Song Nanxing. Based on his information, she selected a 3-courtyard residence in the northwestern corner of the city. Mu Lan did not immediately ask about the price. She wanted to calculate the total cost after selecting the people. Soon the clerk who had left earlier returned with a group of 30 people, making the room suddenly crowded. Young master, these people all know some martial arts. Please take your time to choose. If you are not satisfied, we can bring in the next batch. The clerk had them stand in rows of 10 for her selection. Mu Lan did not know how to select people, so she simply chose the more attractive ones. It was said that the face reflects the heart. Since she did not know how to choose, she would pick the good-looking ones. You, and you, number 147. Second row 258. Third row 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, that's them. Soon she had selected 10 people. Her method of selection was indeed arbitrary. The clerk led the remaining people out and brought in another 10. Young master, these 5 were previously accountants and stewards in wealthy households, and these women are good cooks. Mu Lan pointed at one of the middle-aged men who was neatly dressed and asked, Are you willing? She noticed that since entering he had been frequently glancing at a woman beside him. She guessed they were family. The middle-aged man stepped forward, bowed to Mu Lan, and said, "To be honest, young master, this woman is my wife. We have a 7-year-old grandson. I wonder if you would be willing to buy him as well. I swear to serve you faithfully and never betray you." Just as she had guessed they were a couple, she had not expected them to also have a 7-year-old grandson. One more person made no difference to her, but she thought that buying an extra person might ensure their absolute loyalty. "Get up first. I can buy them all together." With the whole family in her hands, she could use them with greater peace of mind. "Thank you, young master. Thank you, young master." The middle-aged man excited kowtowed to Mu Lan once more. His wife, upon hearing this, also quickly knelt and kowtowed. "Get up quickly." The ancient habit of kneeling at every turn. She thought that today she would probably lose several years of her lifespan. She could not change it, so she had to adapt. Seeing that Mu Lan had finished her selection, the clerk led the remaining people out and brought in the man's grandson. The room now held the 10 previously selected people and the family of 313 in total. "Shopkeeper, how much silver is this house near the West Market?" Mu Lan held up the deed of a house located on the edge of the West Market and asked the shopkeeper its price. "And please calculate the total including these 13 people." The shopkeeper looked at the house deed she had chosen and the dozen people she had selected, thought for a moment, and said, "The house you picked, young master, is 800 taels. Including the people you've chosen, just give me 1,000 taels of silver." Mu Lan found the 3-courtyard house much more expensive than the 2-courtyard one she had bought in the capital, but considering that a 3-courtyard property was much larger and 13 people for 200 taels was reasonable, she did not argue. She paid the silver promptly, and the shopkeeper handed her the house deed and the servants' contracts. He then instructed a clerk to lead her to the 3-courtyard residence. After walking for about 10 minutes, they stopped in front of a house with 2 stone lions at the entrance. The clerk pointed to the gate which bore the inscription, "Shen Residence," and said, "Young master, this is the house you bought. The previous owner was surnamed Shun, and he sold it because the whole family moved away." Mu Lan gave him a tael of silver and told him to leave. The shopkeeper had already given her the keys when she paid. She handed the keys to her newly purchased steward and told him to open the door. When he opened the door, Mu Lan stepped into the courtyard. It seemed the previous owner had just left, so the yard was not yet overgrown. The furniture had not been removed either, which saved her the trouble of buying new ones. Mu Lan entered the courtyard but did not rush to explore it. She went directly to the main hall of the front courtyard. The 10 hired guards and the family of 3 followed her into the hall. Mu Lan sat down in the master's seat and asked, "What are your names?" "Schwat." "Hula." The dozen people knelt before Mu Lan in unison. "Please bestow names upon us, master." Even the 7-year-old child knelt with his grandparents. Mu Lan. She had only wanted to know their names to distinguish them, but she felt like some lofty cult leader, which was still uncomfortable for her. "All of you rise. No need to kneel at every turn, just perform the usual courtesy. You 10 starting from the first shall be called Mu Bai. Then following the Mu surname, you will be Ier Sensi Wu Lu Chi Bajio." Easy to pronounce and remember. Yes, they had been bought by their master, so whatever the master said was law. "You 3, you must already have names right." She thought to herself, "Please don't let me have to come up with names now." She had no more ideas for what to call them. Old servant's surname is Xiao, given name Yongguei. This is my wife, whom everyone calls Xiao Pozi, and my grandson Xiao Yunjia. Mu Lan breathed a sigh of relief. As long as she didn't have to name them, he could call them anything. "Steward Xiao, take these 200 taels of silver. From now on you are responsible for the household expenses. First, buy 2 sets of clothes for everyone, and also purchase some rice flour, oil, and grain." "Yes, master, I will remember." Xiao Yongguei took the silver Mu Lan handed him. "Remember to change the door plaque. Xiao Pozi, go to the kitchen first and prepare a meal for everyone. If you need help, you can buy more people." "Thank you, master." Mu Bai, take a few people to assist Steward Xiao in buying the things you need outside the residence. Tomorrow I will have tasks for you." Mu Lan saw that it was already getting late. Without realizing it, she had spent the entire day outside. She had to return to the prince's temporary villa. Late in the Shen hour, the blazing sun scorched the earth mercilessly. Even at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, the air remained stiflingly hot and humid. After briefly settling in, Steward Zhao's family and Mu Bai's group at the newly purchased residence, Mu Lan left the house and made her way toward the prince's villa. Though she had still not managed to distribute the grain today, she had already planned to have Mu buy and the others make inquiries tomorrow. She intended to identify which grain stores were reputable and influential, then gradually leak out her grain reserves at low prices. Mu Lan walked along the shaded paths, as much as possible keeping close to the walls on her way back. She regretted not having ridden a horse when she left that morning. "Lady Mu, you're back." Lung Yu had been waiting for her at the mansion gate, and immediately rushed over to greet her. "The prince has returned and is waiting for you in his study." Lung Yu relayed the news that the prince had come back looking for her. The prince had assigned Lung Yu and Lung Ling to attend to her. She had been out the entire day, and when the prince returned and asked about her, neither of them could give an answer. She could tell from his expression that he was displeased. Did the prince mention what he wanted? Mu Lan hadn't expected him back so early, as she had assumed he would be busy. The prince didn't say. Lung Yu answered honestly. Mo Yu had privately told her that the prince favored Lady Mu and that she should attend to her diligently. Mu Lan followed Lung Yu into the mansion. She had considered returning to her room for a bath first, but thought better of it, and decided to see the prince first. She would only break out in sweat again after bathing, so she resolved to first ask what the prince wanted, then return to her room and retreat into her space for some cool relief. After wandering about all day, she felt that the sunscreen she had applied before leaving was utterly useless. Knock, knock, knock. Mu Lan approached the study door and knocked a few times. She knew that studies were the most important places in ancient times, especially the prince, so she did not barge in directly. "Enter." Lung Yu pushed open the study door for Mu Lan, who stepped inside, while Lung Yu remained outside. "Your Highness, did you need something from me?" The heat was unbearable, and Mu Lan was eager to return to her space to bathe, so she asked directly. The prince didn't actually have any particular matter to discuss. He had seen Mu Lan still sleeping when he left the mansion that morning. After tending to affairs at the military camp, he grew worried she might be idle and bored at home, so he had returned not long ago. How was he to know she had been out all day? He had thought she might have left silently again. Mu Lan had once mentioned wanting a letter of divorce. Now, whenever he had a spare moment, he found himself both wanting to see her and fearing to see her. "Ahem. I'll be quite busy lately, and the city will be somewhat chaotic. You're still injured. If you need anything, have Lung Yu and Lung Ling handle it. There's no need to do things yourself." He wanted to tell her to stay safely in the mansion, but the words wouldn't come out. "My injuries are nearly healed." The wounds had already scabbed over and no longer hurt. Mu Lan paused briefly, then said, "I simply wish to open a medicine shop within Sangzhou City. I went out today to look for a suitable storefront." Her plan was to wait until the prince granted her the letter of divorce, then open an apothecary in Sangzhou, purchase an estate, and once Nanny Jing and the others arrived, she would be free to leave. "What kind of shop do you want? I'll have Ling Yun arrange it for you." He recalled that he privately owned many shops. He could simply give her one so she wouldn't have to search on her own. "No need. I'll find one myself." She wanted to sever ties with the prince. How could she possibly accept his shop now? "I still have matters to attend to. You may take your leave." The prince had taken time away from camp, hoping to have dinner with Mu Lan. Seeing her refuse his offer, he feared that pressing further would make her leave immediately. He decided to stall for now and devise other plans. Mu Lan hadn't considered that possibility at all. Even if she would have waited until Nanny Jing and Guizhi arrived before bringing it up with the prince. "If your Highness has nothing else, I shall take my leave." After she walked out, he let out a sigh of relief. Until he found a solution, he decided he wouldn't return. Poor Ling Feng and Ling Yun had no idea they would be staying busy with the prince at the military camp. Ling Feng had just been dispatched to search for underground rivers, unaware of the many more tasks awaiting him. Ling Yun and General Song had led troops out of the city to counter the raids and harassment from the northern Yang Kingdom. The grain stores in Sangzhou had been secretly seized by Chu Fun, who refused to use the grain to relieve the people. The prince planned to have it emptied out under the cover of night. Only after arranging everything did the prince find a moment of leisure, returning to the mansion, hoping to share a meal with Mu Lan. Unaware of his intentions, Mu Lan returned to her room after leaving the study and said to Lung Yu, "Lung Yu, you may go. Don't call me for dinner. I've already eaten outside." After dismissing Lung Yu, she closed the doors and windows, then entered her space to bathe. While bathing, she mulled over the meal at the restaurant during the day. It hadn't rained in 2 months. Many people outside had already run out of food, yet that restaurant remained open. Where were they getting their grain and water? If this great city of Tsangzhou ran out of water, even more people would surely die. She didn't want to reveal herself unless absolutely necessary. She thought it best to first search for any underground rivers. Her first thought went to that restaurant she'd visited during the day. Even Song Nanxing didn't know who stood behind it. She wanted to investigate it herself, hoping to uncover where the restaurant sourced its water. Mu Lan harvested the ripened crops in her space and planted high-yield corn and sweet potatoes in their place. Unsure how long the drought would last, she did her utmost to grow as much as possible. Tsangzhou was a northern city, and after October it would descend into the depths of winter drought or not. Even if the drought ended by October, the land would be too frozen to plant anything further. She noticed that crops grown in her space matured far faster than those planted outside. Unable to fathom the reason, she let the thought go. Dawn of the following day. At the same hour as before, Mu Lan left the mansion alone once more. Unwilling to let the prince know what she was doing outside, she didn't bring Lung Yu or Lung Ling. Riding her horse, Mu Lan arrived at the newly purchased residence. Mu Bai and the others were helping Steward Xiao and his wife tidy up the back courtyard. Mu Bai split the others into 2 teams. Have Mu Yi lead one team to investigate which families own the various grain shops in the city and record them all. You'll personally lead the other team. Select some capable orphans and bring them back to be trained. Yes, I'll make the arrangements immediately. Mu Bai didn't question why, he simply obeyed orders. Mu Lan appreciated such people. It seemed her choice of Mu Bai as their leader reflected her good judgment. After arranging matters, Mu Lan headed toward the restaurant she'd visited the previous day. She came to Yongqing Street and stopped at a spot where her spiritual sense could cover the restaurant's vicinity. The weather was oppressively hot. She lingered in the shadow of a building for 2 full hours without gaining anything. Perhaps she would have to come at night. During the day, the restaurant made no purchases. Just as Mu Lan led her horse out of the alley behind the restaurant, she ran into Song Nanxing. He had come specifically to find her, and it was no small feat that he'd searched the scorching streets for her all day. Song Nanxing's face lit up with joy as he hurried to her side, chattering incessantly. "Brother Lan, I finally found you. I looked through several inns, but couldn't find you anywhere." Today Song Nanxing wasn't alone. Behind him followed several sword-bearing guards. "Song Nanxing, did you need something from me?" "Brother Lan, yesterday you mentioned having a batch of grain you wanted to sell. Is that true? I brought it up with my elder brother last night, and he said he'd buy all of it from you." Selling to the Song family was acceptable. Song Nanxing's second brother Song Nanxing was a deputy general in the army. Since General Chu was no longer the prince's man, the Song family should be trustworthy. Mu Lan pondered for a moment, then agreed. "That works." She added, "But I have one condition." "What condition, Brother Lan?" Yesterday Song Nanxing had heard from his elder brother that the prince had privately instructed him to quietly purchase grain. He had set out at dawn specifically to find Mu Lan. "I'll only deal with you directly. You may arrange for people to transport the grain, but you must not reveal to anyone that I have grain. Do you accept these terms?" She only dared to negotiate with a straightforward soul like Song Nanxing, knowing full well she wasn't cut out for business. From yesterday's conversation about how adept his elder brother was at commerce in Tsangzhou, she dared not deal with the man himself. Dealing with such shrewd people, she feared she'd slip up instantly. Her intention wasn't to do business at all. She simply wanted to move grain out for disaster relief through a trustworthy stranger. "That's fine." Song Nanxing was secretly overjoyed. That Brother Lan would deal only with him showed that Brother Lan had good taste. "Very well. Bring your people to the Western Market tomorrow to collect the grain." She gave him the address of her newly purchased residence. When Mu Lan returned to the residence, she failed to notice that the plaque had already been changed to read Mu Residence. Stepping into the courtyard, she called for Steward Xiao. "Steward Xiao, issue orders that no one is to approach the last row of storage rooms. Someone will quietly deliver grain tonight. Tomorrow a man named Song Nanxing will come to transport it. If I'm not here, have the servants cooperate with them to move it out. Steward Xiao, give me the key to the back gate." She sighed inwardly. For an ordinary person trained in medicine, engaging in such affairs was truly beyond her depth. Yes, this old servant will remember. Steward Xiao found the back gate key and handed it to Mu Lan. She felt she had aged several years from all this trouble. It was all far too much for her. At the General Chu mansion, the sound of a teacup shattering echoed. Early in the morning, a subordinate reported that the city granary had been robbed. Several hours had passed, yet the thief remained at large. Chu Fin fumed with rage, demanding, "Have you found out who it is?" "General, we have not yet," the shadow guard replied, his head bowed, unable to meet the general's gaze. He had dispatched many men to search, but no clues had emerged. "Continue the search. Keep a close watch on the Guerrero mansion. Report to me immediately if the 9th prince appears." Chu Fin suspected the 9th prince had already arrived in Songzhou, yet his undercover agents following the Song and Gu families had found no trace of him. The granary theft, so much grain emptied overnight, must have been the work of someone within the military, but who? At the West Market in Songzhou City. "Officer, we are innocent." The rice merchant knelt on the ground, pleading with the leader of a small squad of soldiers. The leader scowled. "Innocent. These are the stolen goods." He pointed to the grain seized from the shop. "Officer, this grain was left over from the shop's previous stock. When the drought began, the proprietor had instructed the manager to keep it for their own consumption. Little did they expect it would be treated as evidence of theft from the general's mansion. Out of my way, or I'll take you in too." They cared not who it belonged to now. It was the general's. The city granary had been guarded by General Chu's men, reserved for the Chu family army. But it was emptied last night. Unable to find the thieves, they now plundered the shops of the wealthy. "Officer, you cannot take it all." The manager hoped the leader would leave them something, otherwise he could not answer to his employer. "Get lost. Get lost." The leader drew his blade, his face dark with impatience, and snarled, "Move aside, or I'll give you a taste of this." Helpless, the manager stepped aside, choosing to preserve his life. Among the onlookers, someone whispered, "If only the 9th prince were here." General Chu rules Songzhou with an iron fist now. "Hush, the prince has been stripped of his title and reduced to a commoner," an old frail man beside him warned. When the drought first began, many wealthy families fled with their belongings. General Chu, fearing the rich would leave, sealed the city gates, forbidding them to depart and barring refugees from entering. Since the 9th prince was deposed and Vice General Chu was appointed champion general by the emperor, he had not only opened the granaries for relief, but also ignored the constant raids and pillaging by the northern Yang people. Who knows if there was ever any grain in the granary? Maybe they staged the theft to extort the merchants. Do you think General Chu had long planned to plunder the shops, using the theft as a pretext? Though the murmurs in the crowd were faint, Mu Lan caught every word. The more she heard, the more indignant she grew. Yet beyond anger, she could do nothing. The prince had returned to Songzhou 2 days ago, and she guessed he was occupied with military affairs. Witnessing the suffering of the people both inside and outside the city in this ancient era where imperial power reigned supreme, she felt a profound helplessness. Mu Lan led her horse out of the crowd and rode toward the Peach Blossom Inn on Yongqing Street. Her intuition told her that keeping an eye on the inn would solve the water problem. "Young master, look. That's the man who helped Song Nanxing yesterday, riding ahead." Last night, General Chu's granary was emptied. Under orders from his uncle, Jun was scouring the city for the thieves, searching the West Market with his men. As Mu Lan rode down the street, the fat, big-eared servant she had struck the day before spotted her and pointed her out to Chu Jun, the second son of Chu. Chu Jun glanced at the soldiers behind him, confident that with so many men, he could capture her alone. Staring at Mu Lan's retreating figure, his face twisted with malice. "After her, all of you. Catch her, and I'll reward you." "Yes, second master." The servants who had been beaten by Mu Lan saw a chance for revenge. One petty officer behind Chu Jun, unwilling to chase in the heat, objected. "Second master, he's on horseback. We can't catch him on foot." Chu Jun snapped, "Shut up and chase him. If you don't, I'll deal with you first." Chu Jun's command left them no choice. They knew he was a man who never forgave a slight and would go to any lengths to torment those who crossed him. Unaware of the pursuit behind her, Mu Lan continued riding toward the Peach Blossom Inn. She had spent the morning crouched behind the inn's back door without success. Now she decided to enter the inn and reserve a private room to gather information. "Second master, look. He's gone into our Chu family inn," the servant gasped, pointing. Chu Jun slapped him and sneered, "I'm not blind. He's walked into our territory. He's not getting out." Hurry, follow me through the back door. Find Manager He. Manager He ran the Chu family's underground businesses, amassing considerable wealth. He was ruthless and skilled in poison, few had ever escaped his clutches. Chu Jun believed that even if Mu Lan were a martial arts master, she would not evade Manager He's poison. He entered the inn's courtyard through the back and went straight to Manager He's room. Knock, knock, knock. Who is it? A deep male voice came from within. Manager He, open up. Second Master Chu is here. Chu Jun's servant answered through the door. Everyone knew Manager He was a poison expert, and they feared offending him. No one would imagine that a tavern manager was a master of poison. Where had General Chu found him? Second Master, please come in. Manager He opened the door and invited Chu Jun inside. Second Master, what brings you here? Though reckless, Chu Jun dared not be insolent before Manager He, having tasted his poison before. Chu Jun stated his purpose, recounting how Mu Lan had humiliated him and asked for help in capturing her. Manager He, thinking it merely a minor matter of a youth with some martial skill, assured Chu Jun that he would handle it. Mu Lan entered the inn, requested a private room from a waiter, ordered a signature dish, and waited. From the moment she stepped inside, she had extended her spiritual sense to cover the entire establishment. She had not expected that after she entered, Chu Jun and his group would slip in through the back door and head straight to a room in the rear courtyard to meet someone. Though too far to hear their words, she could see their expressions, Chu Jun's vicious, calculating look and the middle-aged man's sinister, cunning smile. She sensed they were up to no good. Knock, knock. Sir, your meal is ready. The waiter brought in her order and laid the dishes on the table. Your meal is ready. Please enjoy, the waiter said, then left with the food box. This is poisoned. The same toxin that afflicted the prince. Mu Lan picked up her chopsticks, about to taste a braised lion's head meatball. She immediately located Chu Jun. They were in the adjacent room. They had certainly poisoned the food. Chu Jun asked impatiently, Manager He, why isn't there any reaction yet? Impossible. Even the prince with his great martial arts fell to it. Manager, he said, supremely confident in his poison. Mu Lan overheard their conversation clearly. So the poison that afflicted the prince 3 years ago was the work of Vice General Chu. No wonder the prince had entrusted Songzhou to him when he left. It turned out that General Chu had already wanted to eliminate him back then. Hep. Mu Lan thought, daring to poison me. Let me show you my poison. She retrieved her enhanced sleeping powder from her space, ignited it, and used her spiritual power to send it into the adjacent room. After several thuds, she waited a moment before entering. She searched Manager He, taking all the poison on him, then searched Chu Jun and his men. She then stored Manager He and Chu Jun in her space. Her spiritual sense detected the previous room, filled with shelves of bottles and jars. She also found several chests of gold bars under the bed. She took everything from Manager He's room. Mu Lan decided not to waste time following the trail to find the water. Since this manager was one of General Chu's men, she thought handing him over to the prince would be useful. Even if she found the water, she would still need to inform the prince. Better to let him interrogate the man. Mu Lan returned to her private room, paid the bill, and walked out of the inn openly. Leading her horse away from the inn, she rode toward the prince's residence. Near the house, she dismounted, released the 2 men from her space, placed them on the horse, and led it toward the mansion. Qingfeng courtyard. Lady Mu, what are they doing? Lung Yu saw Mu Lan leading a horse into the courtyard from outside. One of them is the one who poisoned the prince, and the other is the one who tried to scheme against me. Mu Lan's knockout drug was an enhanced version. Even he, the shopkeeper who knew poisons, was knocked out by her. Take these people to the prince. He is General Chu's man. Also outside there is a drought and no water to drink, yet at this time Taiyuan restaurant is not short of water. The prince can interrogate the source of the water. She entered the courtyard and handed the horse's reins to Lung Yu, telling her to deliver the people to the prince. Yes. Lung Yu led the horse, pulling the 2 people knocked out by Mu Lan out of the courtyard. Mu Lan was slacking off again. It was good not to have to use her brain. After she sent Lung Ling away, she headed toward the Haitang courtyard where she was temporarily staying and went back to her room to rest. After Lung Yu saw Mu Lan leave the courtyard, she had the mansion's guards tie up the people and put them in the secret dungeon. She sent a message by carrier pigeon to inform the prince about the 2 people Mu Lan had captured, asking him to decide. In the Song family military camp southeast of Songzhou. Your Highness, a message from Lung Yu. Ling Yun entered the tent and handed the letter from Lung Yu to the prince. The prince and Ling Yun had emptied General Chu's granary last night, transporting the grain overnight to the military camp to supply the soldiers outside. The Beiyang people had been plundering outside the city. The drought was severe, and he could not let the soldiers go to their deaths on empty stomachs, so he stole Chu Fan's grain. When the prince heard that a message had come from Lung Yu, he thought something had happened to Mu Lan. He stood up and took the message from Ling Yun and began to read it. After reading the message, he breathed a sigh of relief. It was not that something had happened to Mu Lan, but that the person who had poisoned him 3 years ago had been caught, and he also learned that Chu Fan had conspired with the emperor 3 years ago to scheme against him. At that time, he was still repelling foreign enemies for the emperor. When he came down from the battlefield, he discovered he had been poisoned. Ling Xiao could be said to have risked his life on the battlefield for the Longxia kingdom, for the Ling family's empire protecting the people. He had always thought his poisoning was administered by foreigners, never expecting it was plotted by his own deputy general and his imperial brother. Ling Yun prepared the horse. At this moment, he wanted to see Mu Lan. He no longer wanted to hide. Yes. Ling Yun did not read the message from Lung Yu. He thought something had happened at the mansion. He quickly left the tent and helped the prince prepare the horse. The prince quickly finished handling his affairs, walked out of the tent, took the horse's reins from Ling Yun, and mounted. I'll return to the mansion first. Tell General Song that the matters in the camp are to be handled by Yu Rang. I understand. At the hour of Su inside the Haitang courtyard. After returning to her room, Mu Lan went to her space to change clothes and bathe. After a whole day, she felt as if she had been sunburned to the point of peeling off a layer of skin. She was wearing a vest and short sleeves, holding half a watermelon in her hands, and only then did she feel alive again. Day after day like this, she would rather perform several surgical operations than feel this tired. Mu Lan had bathed in her space, eaten the watermelon, and felt cooler. She flashed out of the space ready to sleep, but who could tell her why the prince was in her room? Oh no, it's over. Mu Lan stood dumbfounded, unable to believe it. Your Highness, why are you in my room? Mu Lan. The prince was shocked by Mu Lan's sudden appearance, as she had appeared out of thin air. Moreover, she was tall and slender, wearing a strange garment he had never seen before that exposed her arms and legs, and subtly revealed her snow-white creamy bosom. Her soft, smooth hair cascaded over her body, her lips were rosy and seductive, her waist was slender, and her thighs were long. He felt that he could encircle her waist with one hand. The prince was overwhelmed by the sight of Mu Lan. He held her tightly, almost wanting to press her into his body, unwilling to let go, afraid that Mu Lan would disappear again. The prince had read the message from Lung Yu and believed that Mu Lan had left the mansion during the day, all to help him. He had ridden hard and arrived back at the mansion travel-worn. He heard from Lung Ling that she had returned to the mansion and gone straight to her room. Anxious to see her, he abandoned his horse and came to the Haitang courtyard. At the door, he sensed no aura of Mu Lan in the room, so he pushed the door open forcefully and entered, only to find she was not there. Just as he was about to go out to look for her, he was struck by Mu Lan's astonishing appearance. Now Mu Lan's heart was uneasy. She was extremely flustered. What should she do now? Who could tell her? The prince sensed Mu Lan's stiff and nervous mood and gently stroked her head. Mu Lan, held in the prince's arms, was truly terrified at this moment. She was afraid the prince would take her for a demon and strangle her. She said with a panicked expression, Your Highness, don't you have anything to ask? Ling Xiao. The prince did not answer her. He knew Mu Lan must be anxious now. He had been having people investigate her. Ever since she entered the prince's mansion, she had been different from the Mu Lan of the chancellor's residence. He just never expected Mu Lan to be a fairy. The reason he believed she was not a demon was that what demon would no medicine distribute porridge at the city gates, save those villagers in Wujuan City, and shield him from an arrow when a black-clad assailant shot at him? The prince had already decided in his heart that she was a fairy sent by heaven to his side to save him. What? Mu Lan looked up at the prince, puzzled. Call me Ling Xiao. The prince lowered his head and gazed at her with deep affection. Sure enough, upon hearing the prince's words, Mu Lan's body began to relax a little. But in such hot weather, the two of them embracing had made them both sweat, especially the prince, who felt like a huge furnace. Your Highness, you are too hot. Can you let me go and then talk? Mu Lan squirmed, trying to push him away. Not only did the prince not release her, but he tightened his arm around her waist, ignoring her delicate struggles, greedily breathing in the fragrance emanating from her body, with an air of wanting to possess her completely. He had long wanted to do this. Mu Lan's mind was a little dazed. When had their relationship become so close? Was he not curious at all about how she had appeared out of thin air? Your Highness, aren't you even a little curious as to why I appeared out of nowhere? If it were her, she would find it quite terrifying, yet at least she would immediately keep her distance from that person. When you are willing to tell me. The prince now only wanted to keep her by his side, not letting her have any thought of leaving. Your Highness, let me go first. Mu Lan was not used to being held, especially in such hot weather and with a water shortage. If people knew that she could afford to bathe twice a day, they would probably devour her alive. Mu Lan, please don't leave me, okay? The prince held her as if he would not let go until Mu Lan gave him an answer. Your Highness, I am not the original Mu Lan. Where I come from, it's only one couple for life, no polygamy. I have no other women. Only you, and in the future only you. You give me a peach, will I return a jade. I can swear an oath. Mu Lan stopped him. If oaths were useful, there wouldn't be so many divorces. But at this moment she wanted to try. Honestly, she actually liked Ling Xiao in her heart. After getting along with him for so long, she felt that Ling Xiao's words were trustworthy. Even if he could not keep his promise, she could always leave any time. Mu Lan pushed Ling Xiao away. Since Ling Xiao could even accept her appearing out of thin air, she would no longer hide the fact that she had collected grain in Wanzhou. She could now take it out and let him use it for disaster relief. Ling Xiao, when I passed through Wanzhou City before, I followed behind the third prince and the Beiyang Crown Prince and collected the grain from the Wanzhou granary. Now I can give it to you to save the people of Zhangzhou City. Ling Xiao heard Mu Lan's words and knew that his guess was correct. She must be a fairy. Only a fairy from heaven would care about the life and death of the people. The early hours of the night. The mansion was illuminated by lamps scattered throughout, and the quiet stone pathways glowed softly in the darkness. Ling Xiao led Mu Lan through the estate, carefully avoiding the servants, and quietly brought her to an unmanned courtyard. Click! The crisp sound of the door opening. Mu Lan couldn't help but feel that their secretive behavior resembled lovers meeting in secret. She quickly shook her head, dismissing the thought from her mind. After the prince opened the courtyard gate, Mu Lan noticed there were about 7 or 8 rooms within. In just a few breaths, she swept her hand and instantly filled every room with layers upon layers of rice and grain sacks stacked high. Even with his psychological preparation, the prince was still deeply shocked when he saw Mu Lan merely wave her hand and fill the empty rooms and courtyard with sacks of grain in an instant. He still found it hard to believe, yet seeing the warehouse filled with grain sacks made him accept it as reality. Now that the prince had Mu Lan's grain support, he no longer needed to keep Vice General Chu waiting for him to petition the emperor to send grain to Zhangzhou City and allocate funds for disaster relief. With Mu Lan having solved the soldiers' rations, he could now send troops to open the city gates, let the refugees in distribute porridge to aid the distressed, deploy forces to take over Zhangzhou City, and deal with Vice General Chu. Ling Xiao escorted her to the front courtyard before departing to arrange the next steps. Mu Lan, meanwhile, returned to her room to continue sleeping. With everything settled, she could finally enjoy a peaceful night's rest. The next morning, she had slept soundly through the night without a single dream. Mu Lan rose and dressed in a flowing cyan robe, her jade belt cinched at the waist, giving her an elegant and unconventional air. She first used her spatial ability to teleport to the courtyard where she had left the grain the night before. The supply she had placed there the previous evening had already been transported away by the prince's arrangements. With another sweep of her hand, she instantly refilled the courtyard. After completing this, she returned to her room, opened the door, and stepped out. Lung Yu and Lung Ling were already waiting at her doorway. Lung Yu and Lung Ling, from now on you don't need to stand guard at the door unless necessary. The weather is too hot, and you'll suffer from heat stroke if you keep standing outside. Thank you, Mistress Mu. We understand. Lung Yu and Lung Ling bowed and thanked her. Lung Yue, prepare the carriage. We'll be going out shortly. Riding a horse was too hot, so she planned to take the carriage to explore the city and see if she could purchase an apothecary in Zhangzhou. Aside from medicine, she knew nothing else, so she intended to return to her old profession and practice medicine in Zhangzhou. Yes. Lung Yu turned and left the courtyard. When Mu Lan and her party reached the mansion gate, 3 carriages approached from the opposite direction and stopped before them. The driver appeared familiar to Mu Lan. She had seen him during the exile journey disguised as a servant following the prince. His name was Ling Qi. As the carriages drew closer, she could clearly see the last carriage. The drivers were Si Shi and Wan Zi. Before the carriages had even come to a complete stop, Fu Reng lifted the curtain and waved at Mu Lan, calling out, "Mistress Mu. Look, it's Mistress Mu." Fu Reng proudly showed off to Gui Ji and Nanny Jing behind her. They had traveled a long and dusty journey to Zhangzhou, encountering many refugees along the way. Fortunately, Ling Qi, sent by the prince to escort them, had protected them throughout the journey. The city gates had been closed, preventing them from entering, which had caused them great worry. At the city gate, they had encountered the exile group and Uncle Ling. When the gates finally opened, they joined Uncle Ling and entered the city together to search for Mu Lan. "Woo, Mistress Mu, I missed you so much." Upon seeing Mu Lan, Fu Reng was like a bird returning to its nest. Before she could even finish parking the carriage, she jumped out and threw her arms around Mu Lan in a tight embrace. Once the carriages were secured, Nanny Jing and Gui Ji also stepped down. Unlike Fu Reng, they did not rush toward her. However, Mu Lan noticed them secretly wiping away tears, especially Nanny Jing, who kept dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. Seeing them, Mu Lan also felt tears welling up, especially since they had spent so much time together in the prince's mansion. They were the people she had spent the most time with since transmigrating, and a sense of family had grown between them. Nanny Jing and Gui Ji both bowed deeply and said, "Mistress Mu." Despite Mu Lan having given them their freedom contracts, Nanny Jing and Gui Ji had not changed at all. They still maintained their respectful manners and continued to treat her as their mistress. "No need for such formalities. You must have suffered enough on the journey. Come with me to the mansion and rest." Mu Lan helped them up, holding one by each hand, and led them toward the mansion. She didn't forget to call out to Lung Yu behind her. "Lung, you will have someone drive the carriages back. We won't be going out today." "Understood." Lung Yu had already guessed this would happen. Though she had only been with Mu Lan for 2 days, she had already noticed how kind Mu Lan was to those around her. "Mistress Mu, when did you arrive in Zhangzhou?" Since leaving the relay station that day, they had waited in the capital for 2 days without any news, growing extremely anxious. Later, Prince's guard Ling Qi informed them that Mu Lan and the prince were heading to Zhangzhou, so they packed their belongings and followed. "The prince and I only arrived a few days ago," Mu Lan replied, chatting casually with Nanny Jing and Fu Reng as she walked. "Mistress Mu, you don't know what we went through on this journey." Fu Reng chattered away beside her. Fu Reng excitedly recounted their entire journey, including the mistakes she had made along the way. At the beginning of the famine migration, she had felt sorry for a little girl and given her some food. She never expected that the girl would bring a crowd to rob them. Fortunately, Ling Qi and the others had escorted them safely throughout. She still found it terrifying. Having been sold to the prince's mansion since childhood, this was only her 3rd or 4th time leaving the estate with Mu Lan. She had never encountered such a swarm of people rushing toward them. After that, she barely dared to leave the carriage for the rest of the journey. They had arrived in Zhangzhou City the previous day and encountered Uncle Ling and his group, who were also stranded at the closed city gate. Uncle Ling's group had been traveling with the exile convoy. When the gates opened, the convoy was escorted by the magistrates to the government offices, waiting to be assigned to villages for resettlement. 2 hours ago, when the city gates opened, they joined Uncle Ling and entered the city. At the gate, they met Ling Yun, who told them that Mu Lan was staying at the prince's country villa. The prince's speed was impressive. She wondered how he had managed to open the city gates so quickly. They all looked thinner than before, having endured great hardship along the way. Mu Lan led them to Haitang Courtyard. Mu Lan called out to Lung Ling and instructed, "Lung Ling, please make arrangements for Nanny Jing and the others to freshen up." "Yes, I'll go prepare it right away." Lung Ling envied Gui Ji and Fu Reng. She had never imagined Mistress Mu would interact with them in such a warm manner. Nanny Jingyu and Gui Ji Fu Reng should go wash and rest first. "I'll cook lunch for you. And Si Shi and Wan Zi as well. Thank you for your hard work on the journey. Go rest quickly." "Great. We get to eat Mistress Mu's cooking again." Fu Reng danced with joy. Mu Lan smiled and said, "Go on now." She was more than willing to cook for them. She could feel the genuine affection they had for her. After Lung Ling led them away to rest, Mu Lan headed toward the kitchen. She remembered the prince had been busy since last night, so she decided to prepare a few extra dishes and have Lung Yu deliver them to him. I've already cooked for Nanny Jing and the others. How could I forget my own boyfriend? When Mu Lan arrived at the kitchen manager bowed respectfully and asked, Mistress Mu, is there anything you need? Everyone in the villa knew that Mu Lan was the prince's beloved, so none dared to neglect her. Seeing her come to the kitchen, they assumed she wanted to order some dishes. I don't have any special requests. Just leave one stove for me. I'll prepare a few dishes myself. Mu Lan looked around and noticed only a few chickens in the corner of the kitchen along with some wilting vegetables. She had no idea that the prince had specifically ordered the mansion staff to purchase these ingredients at high prices exclusively for her. Since she had been absent from the mansion for several days, no one dared to eat them, and they had been surviving on steamed buns and plain congee. The rice and grain had only arrived this morning from the back courtyard. Without them, there would have been nothing to eat outside, and the kitchen would have had no ingredients to work with. Even in such circumstances, the prince had still considered Mistress Mu so thoroughly. The mansion staff respected her even more, and no one dared to treat her poorly wherever she went. Mu Lan had been busy in the kitchen for an hour. She packed the meal she had prepared for the prince into a food box and handed it to Lung Yu, instructing, have someone deliver this to the prince. Come to the begonia courtyard later for a meal together. Since the prince had already allowed Lung Yu and Lung Ling to follow her, they were one of their own now. Madame Jing and the others could eat the food she cooked, and so could Lung Yu and Lung Ling. Lung Yu responded with excitement, yes, Concubine Mu. She had not expected to be included alongside Lung Ling. Like Lung Ling, she envied Guizhi and Fu Ling, who shared a familial bond with Mu Lan. Mu Lan urged, hurry along. The journey from the mansion would take some time, and although the weather was hot, delays would still affect the food's quality. Mu Lan had Lung Ling carry the food for them back to the begonia courtyard. She never expected Uncle Ling to have such a keen sense for food that he had also made his way there. Concubine Mu, this old servant heard you were cooking personally for Madame Jing and the others, so I've boldly come to share a meal. That can be arranged, but one cannot eat without giving something in return, can they? Mu Lan knew Uncle Ling had previously followed the prince and lived in Sangzhou City managing the prince's clandestine businesses. With Uncle Ling now present, why should she struggle to find a shop on her own? Could he not help resolve this? Concubine Mu, just give the word, and this old servant will see it done. Uncle Ling had long been eager to taste Mu Lan's cooking, and with the prince's backing, he felt nothing in Sangzhou City was beyond his reach. Let us eat first and talk as we dine. Mu Lan led the group to the dining room in the begonia courtyard, where Guizhi assisted Lung Ling in setting out the dishes from the food boxes on the table. Mu Lan had stewed 2 chickens to nourish Madame Jing and the others. One sent to the prince, the other reserved for their meal, accompanied by several vegetable dishes modest in variety, but generous in quantity. Once Guizhi and Lung Ling had finished setting the table, Lung Yu returned. Uncle Ling had not come empty-handed, bringing 2 jars of wine, which he poured for everyone. Concubine Mu, this old servant can finally taste your cooking again. For much of the journey, there was nothing to eat or drink. This old servant has grown quite thin. Uncle Ling and the others had traveled with the exiled group, and fortunately, they had a carriage, otherwise his aged bones might not have survived the journey. As they chatted back and forth, the meal stretched on for a full 2 hours. During this time, Mu Lan shared her plan to find a shop and open a clinic. Madame Jing and the others were delighted, and Uncle Ling offered to handle the search for a suitable location. Mu Lan was grateful to have help, feeling as though her fortunes had improved since arriving in Sangzhou City, with many matters falling into place with ease. At the east gate of Sangzhou City, Ling Jiao watched the prince personally distribute porridge and settle the refugees. Carrying a food box, he made his way toward him. Your Highness, Lung Yu had this servant deliver this. She said. Concubine Mu prepared it herself. The guard Ling Jiao presented the food box to the prince, relaying Lung Yu's words exactly as he had been told. Seeing Ling Jiao and the food box, the prince assumed it was arranged by Uncle Ling, whom he had spotted entering the city that morning. He had never imagined Mu Lan would send him lunch. He had always assumed his feelings were one-sided, never suspecting that she cared for him in return. He immediately took the food box and headed toward his carriage, wanting to enjoy the meal away from the crowded gate. From a distance, Ling Feng spotted Ling Jiao delivering food to the prince and felt a pang of hunger. The previous night, he had interrogated Chu Jun and shopkeeper He about the water source for Taoyuan restaurant. While shopkeeper He remained stubborn, Chu Jun confessed, revealing an underground river beyond the city walls. Ling Feng had immediately led men to locate it and transport the water to the gate for the prince's porridge. He had only managed a steamed bun since morning, so seeing Ling Jiao with the food box, he couldn't resist the urge to beg for a bite. Ling Feng approached the prince's carriage and peeked through the curtain, his mouth watering at the sight of a whole chicken inside the food box. "Your Highness," Ling Feng called out with exaggerated grievance, nearly making the prince drop the chicken leg in his hand. The prince shot him an annoyed look before boasting, "What's all the commotion about? This was prepared specifically for me by Mu Lan." Ling Feng had never expected the prince to change so. In the past on the battlefield, the prince would always eat together with his subordinates. That was what had spoiled Ling Feng and Mou, allowing them to speak casually with the prince and even joke with him. Their bond had long transcended the typical master-servant relationship, forged through shared life and death experiences on the battlefield. "Your Highness, could I beg for a chicken leg? Such a large chicken. You couldn't possibly finish it all by yourself." With so many people outside, Ling Feng dared not raise his voice, instead pleading beside the carriage. "This prince can finish it," the prince replied, continuing to devour the chicken leg, while ignoring Ling Feng's persistent whining, finding Mu Lan's cooking particularly delightful. "Your Highness, then at least grant me a chicken wing." Ling Feng persisted with relentless charm, eventually wearing down the prince until he relented and handed over a wing. Ling Feng quickly devoured the wing he had won, deliberately ignoring Ling Jiao's scornful glare beside him. He knew his companion was merely envious. Afraid Ling Jiao might snatch the hard-earned wing, Ling Feng savoringly licked his lips right in front of him after finishing. "Delicious." Ling Jiao shot him a disdainful glance. "Mph, a petty man celebrating small victories." His knuckles cracked as he restrained the urge to punch him. You're just jealous," Ling Feng retorted cheekily. Mu Lan had prepared generous portions of every dish, and beyond finishing half the chicken, there was still plenty left. He stepped out of the carriage. "The food in the carriage is yours to finish. Ling Jiao, return to the mansion after you eat." Ling Jiao had been assigned to watch over Mu Lan from the shadows. "Yes." Knowing he could not overpower Ling Jiao, Ling Feng obediently shared the meal with him inside the carriage. Huh. Mu Lan had no idea Ling Feng could be so submissive. She would have surely teased him about it. After finishing his meal, the prince returned to addressing the refugee crisis. Yun and Song Nanxing had temporarily held back the Beiyang forces, and plans were in place to deal with Vice General Chu. Watching the refugees lining up for porridge at the city gate, the prince felt deeply grateful toward Mu Lan. With a wife such as hers, what more could a man ask for? He began dreaming of the day when Sangzhou City would stabilize so he could wed her properly in an 8-bearer palanquin. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. Uncle Ling had helped Mu Lan purchase a shop with a courtyard which had previously operated as a herbal medicine store. Over these past days, Mu Lan had Mu Bai and Mu Yi renovate the clinic while assigning Gue Ji and Fu Ling to learn bookkeeping. She intended to delegate the mundane matters so she could focus solely on treating patients going forward. Since the shop had originally been a pharmacy, she only needed Mu Bai and the others to divide it into 2 sections, one for consultations and another for dispensing medicine. She planned to hire several resident physicians to take turns offering free consultations at the clinic's entrance. This would free her to focus on studying difficult conditions prevalent in ancient times and training more students to learn medicine under her guidance. Thus the prince and Mu Lan went about their separate pursuits, each busy in their own domain, and they had not seen one another for several days now. The next morning, the sun rose early, but it was still a scorching day. Mu Lan's medical clinic had been renovated and named Hungin Medical Clinic, signifying a steadfast heart and peaceful joy. Although the Hungin Medical Clinic was small, it was fully equipped. Upon entering, there was a registration desk and patients could drink free medicinal tea while waiting. After being called, they proceeded to the consultation room, and the pharmacy was conveniently located next to it for easy prescription filling. Although the Hungin Medical Clinic was located in the bustling Western market, It was clean, tidy, quiet, and orderly. On the day of the free consultation, the clinic was bustling with people, mostly elderly and children. Fortunately, they had hired 4 physicians in advance: Dr. Wang, Elder Dr. Yang, Dr. Liu, and Dr. Li. By noon, the stream of people continued unabated. She had already asked Cixi to help her set up a table so she could join them in seeing patients. At first, some doubted her because of her youth. Later, a few patients who couldn't wait any longer saw that the queues for other doctors were long and feared they wouldn't get a turn today. So some came to her for consultation. After taking their pulse and examining them, they found her diagnoses accurate. Whenever possible, she also used acupuncture to treat them. Soon people realized her medical skills were exceptional, seemingly surpassing the other 4 doctors. The main reason was that the medicine was too bitter, so gradually her queue became full. Seeing that there were still many patients in line, she said to Lung Ling beside her, "Go boil a pot of hot water for everyone." Got it. She looked up at the long queue and thought no, they still needed to hire more doctors. Dr. Wang, Elder Dr. Yang, and the other 2 were still overwhelmed. "Elder Dr. Yang, you are the oldest. Go rest for a while and have a meal." "Oh, yes, I am getting old. After a whole morning like this, I really can't handle it." "Master Lan, you should also drink some water." Lung Ling handed her a cup of water. "You haven't had any water since this morning." Lung Yu worried that Mu Lan's body couldn't handle it. "It's fine. In the past at the hospital, I often worked overtime. Doing this for a whole morning, I gradually found the feeling of being at the hospital again." She hadn't worked for so long that she almost forgot what it felt like. In a moment, the sky darkened. When people are busy, time passes especially quickly. Mu Lan, Lung Yue, and the others returned to the courtyard villa before it was completely dark. Upon seeing them back, Nanny Jing quickly set out the meals and helped Mu Lan wash her hands to eat. Without regard for anything else, she asked everyone to sit down and eat together. "Madam Mu, this afternoon Steward Ling said the prince's mansion has been tidied up. We can move into the prince's mansion." The prince's mansion. Mu Lan suddenly remembered that they were currently living in the courtyard villa. When they first arrived in Sangzhou City, the prince couldn't reveal his whereabouts, so they had been staying here. Come to think of it, she hadn't seen the prince for several days. When she was busy, she would even forget him. "Nanny Jing, has the prince returned to the mansion?" Mu Lan asked Nanny Jing while eating. Actually, she didn't really want to move into the prince's mansion now. In fact, her Mu residence was closer to the clinic. She was waiting for Mu Bai to buy fertile farmland and a manor. She would put the people from the Mu residence in the manor, and she planned to move into the Mu residence. The prince hasn't returned to the mansion for several days. Uncle Ling is managing the mansion now. Lung Yu kept sneaking glances at Mu Lan and then at Nanny Jing, feeling anxious in her heart. Uncle Ling couldn't get through to Nanny Jing, who now completely obeyed Mu Lan. So Uncle Ling turned his attention to Lung Yu and Lung Ling, hoping they could play a role. Nanny Jing had already told Mu Lan about Uncle Ling's little maneuvers. Watching Lung Yu's actions, Mu Lan found it a bit amusing. She was still too young. The words, "I have a situation," were written all over her face. She didn't mind where she lived. It was just that she didn't like traveling back and forth, feeling that time was wasted on the road. Moreover, both she and the prince were at the beginning of their endeavors. The prince wouldn't often return to the mansion, and she was also very busy. After dinner, Mu Lan returned to her room and entered the space. She selected the largest watermelon and 4 apples, placed them in a food box, then turned and left the space. She walked out of her room and used her spiritual sense to locate Ling Jiao. "You, the shadow guard squatting on that tree branch." "Yes, you." Mu Lan shouted towards a large tree in the begonia courtyard. Ling Jiao saw Mu Lan enter the room and soon come out carrying a food box. She shouted in his direction. He thought there must be someone else besides him. He didn't expect that even his turning to look around on the tree was spotted. Whoosh! Ling Jiao flew down from the tree and walked to Mu Lan. "Madam Mu, I am Ling Jiao. Do you have any orders?" Ling Jiao bowed respectfully. "Ling Jiao, please help me deliver this food box to the prince." "Yes, I will deliver it." Ling Jiao took the food box with both hands and was about to turn and leave. "This is for you to eat." Mu Lan handed an apple to Ling Jiao. "Thank you, Madam Mu." Ling Jiao hadn't expected to get something for himself. After offering his sincere thanks, he picked up the food box and flew out of the courtyard. At the northwest military camp of Sangzhou City, Ling Jiao had been waiting outside the prince's tent for a quarter of an hour. The prince had been in discussion with General Gu and Staff Officer Song for a long time and still hadn't eaten dinner. Ling Feng was guarding the tent entrance. When he saw Ling Jiao carrying a food box, he thought it was another delivery of delicious food from Mu Lan. When Ling Jiao entered the tent, Ling Feng sniffed hard, but after a long time, he couldn't smell any aroma from the food box. Ling Feng was puzzled. That shouldn't be. His nose was very sharp. Why couldn't he smell anything this time? Unwilling to give up, Ling Feng moved closer to Ling Jiao, trying to sniff again. Ling Jiao gave him a disdainful look and sidestepped to put some distance between them, trying to stay away from the glutton. He still had the apple Mu Lan had just given him tucked in his bosom, and he couldn't let this guy snatch it. Ling Feng had long noticed the bulge in Ling Jiao's bosom, but since he knew he couldn't beat him in a fight, he refrained from snatching it to see what it was. The commotion between Ling Feng and Ling Jiao alerted the prince inside, and also reminded those inside that it was already very dark outside. Who's outside? The prince's deep voice came from inside. Reporting to your highness, it's Ling Jiao. Ling Feng immediately straightened up and replied, not daring to be presumptuous with outsiders present. When the prince heard Ling Feng say it was Ling Jiao, his eyes lit up instantly. He secretly guessed that Ling Jiao had brought him a meal. He patted his stomach and realized he was indeed feeling hungry. Let him in. Yes. Ling Feng helped lift the tent flap for Ling Jiao. Hearing the prince's order to enter, Ling Jiao immediately walked into the tent carrying the food box. Your Highness. With outsiders present, Ling Jiao did not mention who sent it. He simply placed the food box in front of the prince and withdrew outside the tent to wait. The prince actually didn't want to open the food box, but meeting two pairs of eyes staring intently at the box, he felt reluctant to open it. Gurgle, gurgle. It was General Gu's stomach growling. Song Nanxing and General Gu both looked at the prince, their eyes seemingly condemning him for making them discuss on empty stomachs and daring to eat alone. The prince saw their determined expressions. They wouldn't let it go without getting food. He truly felt embarrassed to eat alone. So he had to stand up and open the food box. But when he opened it, it wasn't a meal. In the topmost layer of the food box lay 4 large round apples with smooth glossy skin, as if coated with a thin layer of wax. Their color was a vivid red, and they had never seen apples so big. Old General Gu, quick of hand, and I snatched one up. Seeing his move, Song Nanxing immediately reached out and grabbed one as well. He had noticed the prince's hand reaching for the lid of the food box, though luckily he reacted fast enough to snatch one. The prince, looking at the 4 apples now reduced by half, was astonished by General Gu's nimble agility. The prince said to old General Gu in a subdued tone, "Old man, your agility is still so sharp. You could still go back to the battlefield." Ha ha ha. Old General Gu touched his nose with his free hand, paying no mind to the prince's sour remarks. He had gotten his apple regardless. Holding the apple, General Gu felt its smoothness and coolness. He brought it close to his nose, took a deep breath, and inhaled a fresh, delicate, fruity aroma. With a crisp crunch, he bit into the flesh, feeling its firmness and juiciness. The texture was crisp and refreshing, with a flavor that was sweet with a hint of tang and tangy with a hint of sweet. Delicious. Such fine apples. Who sent them? He had intended to annoy the prince for his stinginess, but whether by smell or taste, the apple's flavor was truly memorable. Song Nanxing, stifling a laugh, dared not speak. He took a bite himself, having already smelled the apple's fragrance. His mouth was watering, and he feared the prince might demand it back. The prince, amused by their actions, shook his head and took one for himself, eating it. He didn't dare open the next layer. These apples must be immortal fruits from the celestial realm sent by Mu Lan. Round, larger than his fist, and sweet with each bite. The more he ate, the more he craved. The prince couldn't bear to finish his all at once, but old General Gu and Song Nanxing had already devoured their snatched apples in no time. Now they were eyeing him eagerly, as if urging him to hurry up and eat, waiting for him to open the next layer of the food box. Old General Gu and Song Nanxing carefully collected the seeds from their apples, presumably intending to plant them. Your Highness, take your time savoring. Let me see what's in the lower layer. Old General Gu, growing impatient as the prince ate slower and slower, spoke up. Song Nanxing also seemed eager on the side, looking as if he could help if the prince didn't eat. Ling Feng outside the tent heard everything clearly. Since Ling Jiao had delivered the food box, he had been straining his ears to catch the sounds inside. The crisp, crunching sounds of apples being bitten were so loud and tantalizing that he scratched his head and ears wishing he could rush in and snatch one. Seeing Ling Feng's frantic demeanor, Ling Jiao silently hugged the apple hidden in his chest, holding it tight to prevent it from falling out. The prince, seeing the looks on old General Gu's and Song Nanxing's faces, helplessly reopened the food box, tucked the last apple into his bosom, and then continued to open the lower layer. A verdant green watermelon appeared, its fresh, sweet fragrance wafting into their faces. Beneath the watermelon, Mu Lan had placed a few ice cubes. It felt cool and moist to the touch, and even in the sweltering weather, merely touching it brought a sense of coolness. When picked up, it was heavy in the hand. "Hurry, open it, Your Highness." Old General Gu, already drooling with anticipation, couldn't resist lightly tapping the watermelon, urging the prince to cut it open quickly. "Your Highness, here's a dagger already wiped clean." He eagerly awaited the prince's opening. Song Nanxing, acting most obsequiously, wiped the dagger from his waist and handed it over swiftly. He had already started swallowing saliva involuntarily. If it weren't cut soon, he wouldn't be able to control his drooling. The prince smiled wryly, took the dagger with resignation, and glanced at him. "Umph. Your Highness." Ling Feng at the tent entrance could no longer contain himself and poked his head inside. Seeing his silly grin, the prince said, "You and Ling Jiao both come in." The prince figured that with old General Gu and Song Nanxing already sharing, it wouldn't hurt to include Ling Feng and Ling Jiao as well. Upon hearing the prince's words, Ling Feng didn't even wait for Ling Jiao. Using all his might, he dashed into the tent faster than a rabbit. He swiftly scurried to the prince's side, while Ling Jiao followed with steady strides. The prince cut the watermelon open with the dagger, revealing vibrant red flesh that was most enticing. The watermelon was rich in juice with just the right amount of sweetness, and every bite brought a refreshing coolness. With the prince and the others, 4 or 5 people, each had 2 pieces, and the watermelon was quickly finished, leaving everyone wanting more. The last piece was taken by old General Gu, leveraging his seniority, which prevented a fight from breaking out. At Haitang Court, Mu Lan didn't know that the watermelon and apples she had sent to the prince nearly caused a scuffle among them. She was currently in her space harvesting the recently ripened grain. The grain she had stored from Wanzhou City into her space was almost depleted. Twice a day, morning and evening, she released the grain. The refugee situation in Sangzhou City had mostly been brought under control by the prince's troops. Moreover, the grain she released had also relieved the soldiers' rations in the camp. But that was still not enough. The drought had caused a total crop failure in the neighboring prefectures. The water from the underground rivers was only sufficient for the people's drinking needs, not for irrigating farmland. Sangzhou City, located in the far north, had winters that came early and lasted long. Under such circumstances, without grain, the people of Sangzhou would have a hard time surviving the winter. According to Leng Yue, the prince had already sent Ling Qi to the south to buy grain, but with limited information, the situation in the south was unknown. Hopefully, only the north was affected by the drought, and they could purchase grain and winter clothing. Finally done with work, she went to the bathroom, preparing to soak in a herbal bath to relax. It had been a tiring day. She applied a face mask and lay in the bathtub, turning on the massage mode. She poured herself a glass of red wine and sipped it slowly. With a contented sigh, she felt truly refreshed. She was revived again. The next morning, after getting up and leaving her room, she saw Leng Yu smiling as she carried a tray covered with a handkerchief, waiting for Mu Lan to open it. "Lady Mu, Uncle Ling just sent this over, saying it's a gift from the prince for you." Lifting the handkerchief revealed an exquisite wooden box. Opening it, inside was a complete set of emerald jade jewelry, a gold and emerald hairpin, a pair of emerald gourd earrings, an emerald ring, and an emerald bracelet. Fulling, seeing the jewelry on the tray, giggled, "The prince is so good to you." Mu Lan was also delighted to see the jewelry. Although she didn't particularly like wearing women's clothing, she couldn't resist such beautiful jewelry. It was truly gorgeous. Inside the Hung'an Medical Clinic in Sangzhou City, Mu Lan spent several consecutive days providing free medical consultations to patients. Ling Feng rushed into the clinic from outside, seeking Mu Lan. Seeing many patients inside, he pulled Leng Yu aside and asked her to fetch Mu Lan. "Lady Lan, Ling Feng is waiting for you outside the clinic." Knowing that Ling Feng had always served beside the prince, Leng Yu dared not delay when he came seeking Mu Lan. While Mu Lan was finishing a consultation, Lung Yu leaned close and whispered the news. Mu Lan followed Lung Yu out of the clinic and spotted Ling Feng standing beside a carriage. Upon seeing Mu Lan approach, he lifted the carriage curtain. "Concubine Mu, the prince requests your presence outside the city. Has the prince mentioned what the matter is?" Ling Feng stepped closer to Mu Lan and spoke in a low voice. "It concerns a village called Haiyan Village outside Sangzhou City and several nearby villages. Due to the severe drought, corpses were left unattended. Soldiers dispatched to deliver grain and water discovered not only that village, but also several surrounding ones where the inhabitants had fallen ill. MOU took military physicians to treat them several days ago, but the plague remains uncontrollable. He wishes for you to come and examine the situation." Ling Feng briefly explained the matter to Mu Lan. "What symptoms are they exhibiting?" "Many patients have fevers, and the death toll continues to rise." Mu Lan concealed a stack of banknotes within her sleeve and handed them to Lung Yu. "Remain at the clinic and instruct Mu Bai to procure additional medicinal herbs for transport." "Yes, I shall depart at once." In ancient times, plague outbreaks were matters of life and death, making medicinal herbs essential at such moments. Ling Feng drive the carriage to the rear entrance of the Mu residence to load the herbs before we depart. She planned to retrieve medicinal supplies from several storehouses she had previously secured in the capital for emergency use, supplementing them with additional purchases from Mu Bai. Though uncertain of the plague's full scope, this would suffice for now. When Uncle Ling and the others relocated to the prince's mansion, Mu Lan chose not to accompany them. Instead, she brought Madame Jing and Gue Ji to reside at the Mu residence, conveniently located near the clinic. Since the prince was absent from the mansion, she saw no distinction between residing at his estate or the Mu residence. A quarter hour later, Ling Feng arrived at the rear entrance with the carriage, and Mu Lan entered the storehouse with her keys. She released all the medicinal herbs intended for plague treatment, filling an entire room with supplies. The key to the rear storehouse at the Mu residence had always remained in Mu Lan's personal custody, allowing convenient access to retrieve items from her spatial dimension, as no one else typically entered the storehouse. Ling Feng load the carriage with herbs first while I go to the front courtyard to brief Madame Jing and the others. Only after completing these preparations did Mu Lan permit Ling Feng to enter and fill the carriage. "Understood." Ling Feng rolled up his sleeves and began loading the prepared herbs onto the carriage. She proceeded to the front courtyard and summoned Madame Jing and Gue Ji, instructing them, "Madame Jing, prepare 2 sets of clothing for me. The prince has requested my presence outside the city for several days. Regarding the newly acquired mountain villa outside the city, have Steward Xiao recruit additional workers and construct it swiftly according to my drawings." She intended to build a modern greenhouse at the villa. Once complete, she would have the prince dispatch personnel to replicate the greenhouse design throughout Sangzhou, ensuring both civilians and soldiers would have fresh vegetables during the harsh winter months. She withheld information about the plague from Madame Jing to spare them worry. "Lady Mu, allow me to accompany you." Gue Ji surmised that since the prince had been occupied at the military camp, his sudden summons of Mu Lan warranted closer attention. Concerned for her well-being, she resolved to accompany them. "Very well. Pack a few sets of clean garments." Observing Gue Ji's determination, Mu Lan conceded that having her along for errands would prove useful. Mu Lan returned to her chamber and emerged shortly with a food container in hand. She gathered the bundle Madame Jing had prepared, and alongside Gue Ji made their way toward the rear courtyard. Upon reaching the rear courtyard, they found Ling Feng had already loaded the carriage with medicinal herbs. He accepted the bundle and food container from Mu Lan and secured them aboard. Gue Ji observed the herb-filled carriage and deduced their destination was for medical purposes. With no remaining seating inside, Mu Lan and Gue Ji took their places alongside Ling Feng at the driver's position. Once settled, Ling Feng guided the carriage out of the city. Following the capture of Vice General Chu, the prince had mobilized soldiers to open the city gates and distribute porridge to displaced refugees. Order had been restored at the gates, allowing Ling Feng to drive the carriage out without obstruction. Ling Feng urged the horses forward at a rapid pace. Mu Lan retrieved several face masks from her spatial dimension and distributed one each to Ling Feng and Gue Ji. "From this point forward, keep your masks on at all times. Once we reach the village, Do not remove them under any circumstances. Yes, we shall remember, Ling Feng and Gui Ji responded in unison. After another hour's journey, they finally arrived. In the distance, numerous tents had been erected at the mountain's foot with soldiers stationed at every village entrance. Ling Feng brought the carriage to a halt and signaled for a soldier to approach. You two unload the medicinal herbs from the carriage. Yes, sir. Meanwhile, Ling Feng led Mu Lan and Gui Ji toward a command tent. Upon lifting the flap, Mu Lan spotted Mou engaged in discussion with several physicians. Mou's eyes lit up upon seeing Mu Lan enter. He approached swiftly and pulled her aside to recount in detail his observations of the patients over the past several days. To treat the villagers, she and Mou had devoted themselves entirely to the effort. Fortunately, Gui Ji had accompanied her as an assistant, otherwise managing daily meals and laundry, while studying patients would have been overwhelming. Since arriving at Haiyan village, Mu Lan had worked tirelessly for several days, pulling late nights to conduct experiments and repeatedly analyzing cases of plague infection for signs of deliberate poisoning. Mu Lan shared this discovery with Mou, who led the physicians to investigate. They ultimately traced the poisoning to the mountain village's water source. Following the clues, they uncovered that residents of Beiyang had deliberately contaminated the water supply. After half a month of relentless effort, they brought the outbreak under control and no further deaths were reported. Several days later, the plague in the surrounding villages was finally eradicated. Back at the Mu residence in Sangzhou City, Mu Lan and Gui Ji returned. Gui Ji, go rest immediately. You've suffered enough accompanying me these past days. This servant finds no hardship in following you, madam. Enough now, go at once. She instructed Madame Jing to ensure no one disturbed her, declaring she would sleep for 3 days and nights straight. The relentless exertion had left dark circles beneath her eyes. At the northwest military camp, Ling Feng and Mou returned to report to the prince on the plague situation in Haiyan village and the surrounding areas, including the actions of the Beiyang nationals. Upon learning Mu Lan had returned to the city, the prince attended to pending matters and directed Ling Feng and the others to consult with General Gu and Song Nanxing should anything arise. The prince accompanied Ling Yun to the stables, mounted his horse, and rode back toward the city with Ling Yun. It was the last hour of high. In the main hall of the front courtyard of the Mu residence, Mu Lan had been sleeping since she returned home. She hadn't even noticed when someone else entered her room. What's more, after entering the room, this person had been standing by her bedside watching her. Finally, she seemed to sense something, a feeling of being watched by someone in the darkness. She abruptly snapped open her eyes and caught sight of a dark silhouette. It startled her so much that she nearly broke into a sweat. Having returned to the Mu residence, she had let her guard down and her vigilance was nowhere near as sharp as usual. She reacted swiftly, throwing off the covers as a dagger appeared in her hand and lunged toward the shadow. Mu Lan, it's me. The prince hadn't expected her to wake up and fail to recognize him. Ling Xiao, why are you here? She finally withdrew the dagger back into her spatial realm. Darkness had already fallen outside and a single candle flickered on the table. Moments ago, when the prince stood by her bedside, his figure had blocked all the light, leaving her unable to see his face. Now, by the candlelight, she could finally see him clearly. He had grown thin with dark circles under his eyes, even worse than hers, a scruffy beard and disheveled clothing. Yet the moment he laid eyes on her, a hint of relief softened his brow. Lately, the people of Beiyang and the escaped third prince had been repeatedly provoking them with military force. The Beiyang forces had been burning, killing, and looting near Sangzhou City, seizing grain. The prince had been resisting the Beiyang forces, while simultaneously worrying about Mu Lan treating the plague in Haiyan village. He had lost a great deal of weight. I heard from Ling Feng and Mou that you had returned, so I rushed over to see you. Nanny Jing said you were still asleep. I wanted to see you so badly, but since you were sleeping, I didn't wake you. Have you had dinner yet? Having just woken up, she felt a pang of hunger. Not yet. I waited for you to wake so we could eat together. A tender light shimmered in his eyes like the brightest stars in the night sky. Mu Lan instantly felt the depth of his affection for her, and an inexplicable joy surged within her heart. Her jet-black hair cascaded down her shoulders like a waterfall, fine and silky. The prince gently drew her into his embrace, as if she were the most precious treasure in all the world. In the candlelight, her cherry lips glistened with a soft sheen, making him ache to steal a kiss. He leaned in close, pulling her tightly into his arms. Before Mu Lan could even react, she felt the prince's breath upon her. His lips landed on her forehead, then slowly trailed downward, gently brushing across her brows and eyes. She tried to break free from his embrace, but he only held her tighter. His breath enveloped her completely, sending an involuntary tremor through her body. Before she could respond, his lips were already pressed against hers, kissing her with both fervor and tenderness. Her soft curves pressed against his solid chest, and their hearts, so close together, seemed to beat faster than usual. In the silent room, the rapid drumming of their heartbeats was unmistakable, their blood burning like wildfire. She felt as if a sudden current had surged through her body, leaving her tingling and numb all over. She felt as though she were drowning in the prince's gazeful tenderness, and before long, everything threatened to spiral out of control. "No, your highness, I'm afraid." When she came to her senses, fear seized her, and she trembled in his arms, struggling, her voice laced with pleading. "Don't move." Startled back to his senses by her voice, he immediately stopped, but his head remained buried in the crook of her collarbone, suppressing the surging desire within him, unmoving for a long while. Ningen could feel his tension and dared not move a muscle, waiting for him to calm down. Grr! Her stomach chose that most inopportune moment to rumble, thoroughly ruining the mood. She lowered her gaze, a flush of embarrassment creeping across her cheeks as she forced a faint, awkward smile. Mu Lan pushed him away and waved her hand, causing several dishes to appear on the table, the same ones she had ordered from a restaurant in the capital through Mengpingen. The aroma of the food instantly filled the entire room, tantalizing and irresistible. She eagerly pulled him to sit down and eat. They ate and chatted about what they had each encountered recently. After the meal, she brought out some strawberries. "These are strawberries. Try some, they're delicious." Ling Xiao picked up a strawberry and took a bite. So sweet, truly delicious. It's getting late. You should head back now." His words reminded her of their kiss just now. It was the first kiss she had ever shared in both lifetimes. "Mu Lan, will you marry me? I'll marry you properly, with a grand procession and a bridal sedan." After that kiss, the prince wanted to marry her as soon as possible. It seemed he needed to resolve the harassment from the Beiyang forces quickly. "All right. Then hurry up and settle the troubles within and outside Sangzhou City. I'll be waiting for you to come and marry me." Hearing Mu Lan's words, the prince felt like leading his troops to attack Beiyang that very instant. Suddenly an idea struck Mu Lan, and her eyes sparkled. "Your Highness, take me to strip the third prince's forces bare of their provisions and horses. Once they're out of supplies, let's see how they dare plunder the people of Sangzhou City." "Very well." The prince watched her, utterly captivated by her scheming, money-loving expression as she plotted how to empty out the enemy's stores. "I'll wait for you outside. Change your clothes and come out. I'll take you to the northwestern military camp." "Your Highness, let's go." After the prince left the room, Mu Lan stepped into her spatial realm and emerged dressed in men's attire. 2 hours later, at the northwestern military camp outside Sangzhou City, she dismounted and silently complained about how terrible the ancient roads were. Although she hadn't been the one riding the horse, the bumpy journey had left her uncomfortable. "Ling Xiao, with so many refugees in Sangzhou City, now how are you handling them?" Mu Lan wanted to suggest that the prince repair the roads in Sangzhou City. Travel was far too inconvenient. There was wisdom in the saying, if you want to get rich, build roads first. The refugees in Sangzhou are temporarily settled outside the city. Commander Qi has taken them out to reclaim wasteland. Why do you have some good ideas? The prince wanted to hear her suggestions. Mu Lan then told him about the greenhouse she had built on the estate she purchased outside the city. She also suggested that he take this opportunity to manage food for the refugees, employing them in exchange for labor, hiring them to repair roads, while also building greenhouses to grow vegetables. There are plenty of refugees after all. If you're short on funds, I can lend you some. She was quite wealthy now. The prince listened as Mu Lan spoke with such conviction, and when she boasted about having plenty of money to lend him, her smug expression made her look utterly adorable. He couldn't help but reach out and ruffle her hair, which had been tousled by the fast ride. Mu Lan swatted away the hand that was touching her hair. "Don't mess up my hairstyle." What hairstyle did she even have now? Dressed as a man, she wore a high ponytail secured with a hair crown. The prince burst into low laughter from deep within his chest at her words. All right, I'll have it done tomorrow. He led Mu Lan into his own tent, telling her to rest there for the night while he went out to make some deployments. The Bayong crowned Prince, the third Prince Grand Tutor Ruan, and Prime Minister Mu had led 100,000 Bayong troops, and were now stationed in a valley 50 li away. On the prince's side, Commander Chi had taken 100,000 soldiers to guard the east and south gates of Tsangzhou City. The prince led the remaining 100,000 to guard the west and north gates, the two gates that bordered the Bayong Kingdom. The following day, within the northwestern military camp of Tsangzhou City, when Mu Lan rose and stepped out of her tent, the prince was already leading the soldiers in drills. From a distance, she caught sight of him. His face as smooth as purple jade, his eyes bright as luminous stars, his posture tall and straight, standing before the soldiers like an ancient pine or cypress. His raven black hair was bound back, his stern face radiating an aura of authority, his gaze sharp as an eagle's, instilling awe in all who looked upon him. The armor upon the prince gleamed with golden light, and the dragon patterns embroidered upon his battle robe were rendered so vividly that they seemed ready to take flight, exuding an air of nobility. Your Highness, Concubine Mu has arrived. Ling Yun, standing behind the prince, happened to notice Mu Lan and reminded him. Though the distance was considerable, it still fell within the range of her divine sense, and she caught the words Ling Yun spoke to the prince. You continue leading the drills. Having said this, the prince turned and walked toward Mu Lan. You are awake. Clad in full armor, the prince's long legs appeared even more straight and elegant. True to his reputation for long limbs, the prince covered the distance in just a few strides. Yes, I have awakened. As he drew nearer, he appeared even more imposing and majestic, his heroic bearing unmistakable. The prince clearly relished the admiring gaze Mu Lan cast upon him. Under her scanning eyes, he straightened his posture even further. Uffed. Mu Lan noticed the prince's subtle gesture and could not help but laugh aloud. She quickly covered her mouth, struggling to stifle her giggles. Is it hot wearing that armor? Do take it off before you suffer from heat stroke. The moment they returned to the tent, she helped the prince remove his armor. Ahem. It is not hot at all. I have grown accustomed to it. As she lifted the armor from his shoulders and weighed it in her hands, it was indeed remarkably heavy, easily amounting to dozens of jin. Hurry and wash up. Mu Lan thought to herself that claiming it was not hot was absurd, yet she still couldn't help but admire those who served as soldiers, who trained with the same intensity as though they were on the battlefield. After they had both finished washing, she retrieved from her spatial realm 2 bowls of wontons, 10 meat buns, 10 vegetable buns, 2 steamer baskets of soup, dumplings, fried dough sticks, soy milk, and various other items. She also included the tea eggs she had braised in her spatial realm during her spare time. Mu Lan picked up her spoon, took a bite of wonton, and casually asked, Your Highness, do you have a map of the valley where the Bayong forces are stationed? Yes, I will show it to you after we finish breakfast. The prince served her a soup dumpling, having noticed her preference for them. Wonderful. She wanted to understand why the Bayong people persistently maintained their garrison there, constantly harassing and plundering Tsangzhou City. Moreover, with Tsangzhou City currently suffering from drought and famine and teeming with displaced refugees, even if they were to capture the city, they would inherit nothing but a ruined mess. She wondered why they insisted on seizing it. If it were her decision, she would not want Tsangzhou City at all. She was only willing to remain here because it was the prince's stronghold. Even if the third prince wished to assist in conquering the Longxia Kingdom, Tsangzhou City was now so impoverished that there was nothing left to gain. They could easily bypass it. She truly could not fathom what the Bayong people were plotting. Before long, they had finished breakfast. After the prince watched her clear the remnants from the table, he brought out the map and spread it flat, pointing out the location within the valley to her. Upon first glance, Mu Lan felt a sense of familiarity. Logically, it should not have seemed familiar. She could confirm that the original owner of this body had never been to Tsangzhou before. Seeing her furrow her brow, the prince asked, What is wrong? Is something amiss? She shared her thoughts with him. I seem to have seen this somewhere before, but I cannot quite recall where. If you cannot recall, do not force it. The prince gently smoothed her knitted brows with his fingers. Meanwhile, Mu Lan had already sunk her consciousness into her spatial realm, searching through its contents. She no longer heard anything the prince was saying. Ha ha ha. Suddenly an image flashed through her mind. I remember. It was the hand-drawn map that had been stored in a wooden box within the treasury of her former father, the humble prime minister, the first time she had emptied his storehouses after transmigrating. At the time, she had complained that even if someone had given her a treasure map, it would have been useless since she lacked any knowledge of the geography of the Longxia kingdom. She retrieved the wooden box from her spatial realm, placed it on the table, and opened it. Inside lay a yellowed scroll of sheepskin. She carefully unrolled it and compared it with the prince's map. The locations matched perfectly. It was precisely where the Beiyang forces were stationed in the valley. The hand-drawn map in Mu Lan's possession was far more detailed, recording the conditions within the valley. She handed it to the prince, thinking that such intricate and complex matters were better left to those who were experts. This was not her area of strength. It was not that she wanted to be lazy or shirk responsibility. It was simply that she was not skilled in such matters. The prince picked up the hand-drawn map and studied it intently. Not wishing to disturb him, she found a seat nearby and retrieved a cucumber she had grown in her spatial realm, taking a bite. Recently, the land within her spatial realm had been planted with sweet potatoes, and corn, all high-yield crops that required infrequent watering. She was considering whether she should find time to visit other cities and purchase grains and warming supplies to help the soldiers and civilians of Zhangzhou City endure the coming harsh winter and heavy snows. Perhaps she should even pay a visit to the Beiyang kingdom herself and empty their national treasury, teaching them a lesson for plundering others. A moment later, the prince, clutching the hand-drawn map, turned around excitedly and strode toward her. Mu Lan, you are truly my lucky star. Overcome with emotion, the prince embraced her and kissed her forcefully. She was in the middle of biting into her cucumber when the prince's kiss caused it to slip from her hand. Just moments before, she had been lost in thought, and his sudden display of excitement left her utterly bewildered. She stared at him blankly. Ling Xiao, are you running a fever? She reached up to touch his forehead. It was slightly warm, but he did not have a fever. Mu Lan, there is a gold mine within the valley. No wonder the Beiyang people have maintained their garrison there all this time. Ling Xiao, you must lead your troops to seize it immediately. Do not let the Beiyang people keep it. Once we have captured the gold mine, we will have the funds to develop Zhangzhou City. Upon hearing about the gold mine, Mu Lan's heart swelled with delight. No wonder her humble father and grand tutor Wan, even without the grain reserves of Wanzhou or the iron mines and weapon factories of Wujuan City, still chose to send expeditions against the Beiyang kingdom. Mu Lan, this hand-drawn map records not only the gold mine, but also a series of symbols whose meaning is unclear. What could they represent? Mu Lan took a glance, but could not make sense of them. She had not even fully mastered the characters of the Longxia kingdom, let alone recognize these symbols. She realized that her humble prime minister father and his associates must have been collaborating with the Beiyang kingdom for quite some time, exploiting the valley's resources for an unknown duration. Ling Feng, go invite General Gu and Commander Song. Tell them that I wish to discuss matters with them. Yes, sir. I will go at once. Outside the tent, Ling Feng acknowledged the order and departed immediately. A quarter of an hour later, Your Highness, General Gu was the first to arrive in the tent. General, please be seated. Wait just a moment. Initially, upon learning that the prince intended to deliberate over the gold mine in the valley, Mu Lan had little interest and wished to step out for a walk. However, the prince insisted that she remain. Mu Lan had placed several apples on the table. The moment the old general entered, his eyes immediately fixed upon the apples. Your Highness, so you merely summoned me here to share apples with me. Rare indeed that you show such generosity. General Gu made his way toward the table bearing the apples, his gaze fixed solely upon them, oblivious to all else. Mu Lan offered him a respectful salute. Ahem. General Gu. Oh. Haha. Excellent, excellent. He awkwardly scratched his nose, somewhat abashed. He had entered without noticing the others present, primarily because the apples were too tempting to ignore. When Commander Song entered, he was trailed by his son Song Nanxing. Upon seeing Song Nanxing, Mu Lan immediately retreated behind the prince. Ahem. This young man was still unaware of her true identity, and she had not yet found an opportunity to explain it to him, especially since he genuinely regarded Mu Lan as a sworn brother. Song Nanxing had spotted her the moment he arrived. He saw her hiding behind the ninth prince. Having been instructed by his second brother to show respect to the ninth prince, he dared not behave presumptuously. After retreating, Mu Lan immediately regretted her actions. What was there to be ashamed of? It was not as though she were concealing anything disreputable. She stepped out from behind the prince. "Hey Song Nanqing." She waved and smiled in his direction as a greeting. "Brother Lan, so you're here too." Song Nanqing hadn't expected to see her in the military camp. "I went to the Mu residence to find you, but Steward Xiao said you had gone out." "Huh? Is that so?" Mu Lan felt a twinge of guilt. Though it was out of necessity, she had concealed her identity, and she still hadn't revealed that she was a woman. Seeing Mu Lan greet him, Song Nanqing was instantly delighted, and he forgot his fear of his second brother Song Nanqing. "Greetings, Your Highness." "Greetings, General Gu." Song Nanqing knew his younger brother was unreliable. After the incident where Chu II had beaten him up, he had brought him to the camp for training. "Greetings, Your Highness." "Greetings, General Gu." At ease. The prince had heard from her that when she first arrived in Songzhou, she had encountered Song Nanqing and even saved him, and she had wanted to collaborate with him on selling grain. The prince remained silent, watching her exchange pleasantries with Song Nanqing. After Song Nanqing and his second brother had paid their respects to the prince and General Gu, he walked over to Mu Lan. The prince and General Gu began discussing the map of the gold mine occupied by the northern Yang people in the valley, leaving them no time to pay attention to the two. "Brother Lan." Mu Lan took an apple and handed it to Song Nanqing, chatting with him quietly as they talked. She was so engrossed in conversation with Song Nanqing that she failed to notice the prince, though discussing matters occasionally, glanced over at them from the corner of his eye. The prince suddenly felt that he was perhaps too old. What could she possibly have to talk about with that little brat Song Nanqing? It was around the end of the sea hour. Mu Lan and Song Nanqing sat aside, munching on apples, listening to the prince and the others discuss matters, but they couldn't get a word in. Neither of them was interested in military tactics and deployment. Later, bored, they began playing Gamoku in silence. It was mainly because she only knew how to play Gamoku, not any other chess game. The prince and the others discussed for about an hour. "No more? You're too good." Mu Lan had won several taels of silver from Song Nanqing, frustrating him so much that he refused to play with her anymore. "Haha, I don't need your silver, okay?" Mu Lan awkwardly rubbed her nose, feeling as if she had bullied a child. They finally decided to first send people to scout the valley situation and then make arrangements when the scouts returned. This third Prince Ling Yenshe truly is despicable, betraying his country. Commander Song simply couldn't understand how Grand Tutor Ruan, Prime Minister Mu, and the third prince had become so deranged. Slap. General Gu, furious, slammed the table and cursed. "Using Longxia's gold mines to support the northern Yang soldiers. I want to lead my troops out now and wipe them out." The Gu family had fought for years in Sangzhou, and several of General Gu's sons had been killed by the northern Yang people. The Gu army had been at mortal odds with the northern Yang, and he harbored a deep hatred for them. He had guarded the frontier for the Ling family in Sangzhou, and what the emperor and his son had done chilled his heart, prompting his outburst. "Commander Song, I entrust this task to you. Once your men return, we'll make the final deployment. Rest assured, Your Highness, I will complete the mission." After General Gu and Commander Song finished their discussion, the prince sent them off. Of course, when they left, they didn't forget to take all the remaining apples. The prince helplessly rubbed his forehead, but allowed it as Sangzhou was truly too poor. Mu Lan had indeed brought them out to share, and she didn't mind them taking all. Had she not feared exposing her spatial space, she would have provided rations for the soldiers. 2 days passed in a blink. Every day the prince was busy in the camp drilling soldiers and handling affairs sent from Sangzhou City. He was so busy he often forgot to eat, and Mu Lan had to remind him. During these 2 days, aside from going to the kitchen to cook a few dishes for the prince, she spent her time in the tent writing and drawing. Mu Lan wrote down some military strategies. She knew how to build roads, dig ponds for water storage, and construct heated brick beds in houses for winter warmth. Though she didn't know the specifics, she shared these ideas with the prince, asking him to find skilled craftsmen to research and develop them. She also wrote about arrangements for disabled soldiers she had read in novels, like land reclamation, raising pigs and chickens, a series of plans. She was currently writing simple Western medical treatments, intending to compile her medical knowledge into a book to train more military doctors. The chickens, ducks, and geese she raised in her space had overpopulated along with many vegetables she had planted. She kept a few for breeding. The rest were released at night with the prince, then given to the kitchen to supplement meals. Unfortunately, in her past life, she had studied medicine, not business. To develop Sangzhou, economic growth was needed to attract more people. Only then could Sangzhou truly prosper, and with wealth they could support more soldiers. Finally, on the 10th day, Commander Song returned with his men. "Your Highness, I have returned." Upon returning to camp, Commander Song immediately reported to the prince on the situation in the valley. The valley is vast with several large mountains forming a gourd mouth shape, and many soldiers guard the entrance. They had to circle far around to sneak in through weakly guarded areas under cover of darkness. Many soldiers are stationed there, both Northern Yang troops and the Third Prince's men, roughly 70 to 80,000 in total. Further details couldn't be obtained as the defense was tight. The valley was easy to defend and hard to attack, making it no easy task to take. Hearing the results of Song Nanxing's reconnaissance, the prince and General Gu fell silent. "Your Highness," Mu Lan wanted to say she could go, but before she could speak, the prince stopped her. "Commander Song, go rest for now. We'll discuss this after you've rested." After General Gu and Song Nanxing left the tent, the prince pulled her aside and said, "Mu Lan, promise me you won't expose your space unless absolutely necessary." He feared he couldn't protect her. Even if she could hide in her space when in danger, he still worried for her safety. Mu Lan actually wanted to scout the area herself, but she had psychic powers the prince didn't know about, and she worried he wouldn't allow her to go alone. Mu Lan. Seeing that she didn't reply, the prince guessed she intended to go secretly. He immediately grabbed her hand firmly, signaling with his eyes not to even think about sneaking off alone. "Fine, I won't go alone secretly." Seeing his anxious expression, as if he wouldn't give up until she agreed, she relented. She wasn't ungrateful. Acting rashly would disrupt the prince's plans. A month later, outside the valley 50 li from Sangzhou City, the prince led his troops out of the valley. After a month of fierce fighting, they had successfully driven away the people of Beiyang Kingdom. The soldiers of Sangzhou City, beaming with joy, escorted carts loaded with grain and refined gold heading from the valley toward Sangzhou City. Little did they expect that the valley not only contained a gold mine, but also vast fields of grain and livestock. Now the citizens of Sangzhou could safely survive this famine year. Since the prince was poisoned by Vice General Chu and returned to the capital years ago, the Beiyang people had occupied this valley. Over 3 years of continuous mining had yielded much gold, even refined into many ingots. Now cartloads filled several wagons, all falling into the hands of the prince and his men. The prince led 100,000 troops and fought the Beiyang people for a month before completely driving them out, along with the dying third prince Ling Yinsha, who was on the verge of vomiting blood. The Grand Tutor Prime Minister Mu and their families all perished in this battle. Only the third prince was saved by Han Wayne. But the third prince, unable to bear the shock, had vomited much blood. Due to extreme grief, he likely didn't have long to live. Third Prince Ling Yinsha never imagined that whenever he was about to succeed, he would be defeated by his ninth uncle, the prince. Ninth uncle was simply his nightmare. With the abundant grain and gold brought back from the valley outside Sangzhou before the prince's party even returned to the city, many citizens were already cheering at the city gate. Their ninth prince was truly formidable. Not only had he provided gruel to refugees recently, but he was also returning with so much grain. Now they need not fear the harsh winter. With ninth prince here, the people won't go hungry. The crowd felt hope for survival. That General Chu appointed by the emperor only extorts the people. I heard it was General Chu who poisoned ninth prince, and the prince had him killed long ago. We'd rather have ninth prince continue to govern Sangzhou. The people didn't care who was emperor as long as their stomachs were full. How could such a good prince collude with foreign enemies and betray the country? Look, ninth prince is riding into the city. The citizens, seeing the carts of grain, shouted loudly, "Long live ninth prince! Ninth prince is mighty. Ninth prince is valiant." The citizens at the city gates, seeing their prince enter, knelt on both sides of the street, thanking him for his aid. Yang Xiyu among the crowd watched the prince ride past with Mu Lan. Though unwilling, there was nothing she could do. After the fire at the post station, the officials checked the registry and found that the third prince, Grand Tutor Prime Minister Mu, and their families had fled, and Mu Lan was not listed either. They concluded she had also run away. At that time, she was delighted, thinking there would be no one else by the prince's side. But she never expected the prince to send her a letter of divorce and a 10,000 taels silver note. Yang Xiu didn't agree at the time, but her father, instigated by his concubine, gladly accepted the silver and agreed on her behalf. 3 months later, the prince's mansion in Sangzhou was filled with joy. Ling Shu had the entire estate cleaned, thoroughly decorated with lanterns and colorful banners, and red silk hung throughout the courtyard. For today was the wedding day of 9th Prince Ling, Xiao, and Mu Lan. After months of busy development, the prince used the gold brought back from the valley to send people to prosperous regions to buy grain and winter supplies. Even in the bitter cold of winter, under the prince's arrangements, few of Sangzhou's citizens died of hunger or cold. With Sangzhou stable, the prince could finally marry Mu Lan. On the wedding day, she was roused from bed at midnight by matron Jing. Guizhi and Fuling dressed her in bridal attire with a golden crown and jade hairpins. Her face was fair and delicate, with just a touch of powder rouge on her lips and eyebrows outlined with dark pigment. The phoenix stepshake crafted by the prince's order accentuated her nobility and beauty. Matron Jing recalled when she had been a matchmaker and went to Prime Minister Mu's mansion to fetch Mu Lan. At that time, Mu Lan was a pitiful girl with only a bundle and a jewelry box. Now, seeing her mistress marry the prince as his lawful wife, Matron Jing wiped her moist eyes, feeling happy for Mu Lan. At the auspicious hour, Mu Lan, in her crimson princess robes and phoenix coronet, left the Mu residence to the sound of music. Song Nanxing insisted on carrying his sister out of the house, as her brother muttering that if the prince ever bullied her, she should tell him. Even if she married a prince, he would always be her backbone. After Mu Lan revealed to Song Nanxing that she was a woman, he went home and told his 2 brothers he wanted to adopt Mu Lan as his sister. Song Nanxing's second brother, who had seen Mu Lan by the prince's side, agreed without hesitation. Hearing Song Nanxing's words, Mu Lan felt warm inside. She never thought she'd find a playful brother in this ancient world. Though they had only known each other for a few months, she could feel Song Nanxing's genuine brotherly affection at every moment. Song Nanxing felt it was only a few steps to the bridal sedan. Matron Jing helped Mu Lan into the sedan and placed an apple in her hand. The fiery red sedan had a crimson curtain embroidered with gold-laced auspicious characters and cloud patterns, plus a design of a unicorn bringing a sun. The pagoda-shaped top gleamed with large colored tassels at each corner, their fringes hanging down to the ground. After Mu Lan boarded, 8 guards, Ling Sen, Ling Qi, Ling Jiu, and others, lifted the sedan. Matron Jing, Guizhi, Fuling, Lung Yue, and Lung Ling walked alongside. The prince, in a red robe, radiated brilliance. His handsome face glowed with elegance. Riding a tall horse, a gentle smile curved at the corners of his mouth. He appeared even more majestic and imposing. Song Nanxing and his brothers rode behind the prince, followed by Ling Yun and Ling Feng. Mu Bai and Mu Yi rode behind the sedan to protect it. Behind the sedan followed dowry chests that Mu Lan had brought out from her space. Truly a dowry stretching 10 miles. The dowry procession stretched from one end of the street to the other, orderly and grand. Countless flower petals lined the road, and red silk ribbons were tied to every tree in the city. Guards maintained order along the road, while the crowded onlookers craned their necks to witness this once-in-a-century wedding. Someone in the crowd led the cheers. The prince fights on the battlefield, protecting Sangzhou and Longxia. May the prince and princess enjoy a happy marriage. The princess is skilled in medicine and even offers free consultations. May the prince and princess live in harmony for 100 years. The citizens of Sangzhou offered their blessings in unison. At the mansion gate, the prince personally carried Mu Lan from the sedan, took her hand, and stepped into the hall adorned with red silk. Both wore magnificent red robes. Though her veiled face was hidden, her figure was striking. A waist cinched with a flowing silk belt embroidered with a phoenix, perfectly outlining her graceful curves. A double happiness patterned silk sachet hung at her waist, and her crimson gown trailed with embroidered phoenixes. Even just her silhouette was stunningly beautiful, perfectly matched with a handsome prince. Ling Shu intoned majestically, "Bow to heaven and earth. Bow to the ancestors. Bow to each other. Escort to the bridal chamber." After the ceremony, the prince carried Mu Lan all the way to the bridal chamber. Guided by matron Jing, the prince lifted Mu Lan's red veil. Shy, her fair skin blushed slightly. Her skin was tender and smooth like the finest treasure in the world, radiating an alluring glow that seemed particularly enticing to the prince. Following matron Jing's guidance, the ceremony was completed. After matron Jing, Guizhi, and Fuling left the room, only the prince and Mu Lan remained in the bridal chamber. In the flickering candlelight, the embroidered silk quilt was spread with red dates, peanuts, longans, and lotus seeds, symbolizing the wish for an early heir. The large red candles on the stand burned slowly, shedding waxy tears. The footrest was carved with bats and clusters of grapes, smooth and glossy. The prince poured wine for both, then walked to Mu Lan with the nuptial cups. The prince appeared calm as he handed her the cup, but his face and neck were already flushed. With a smile like spring breeze and drizzle, he said, "My lady, please. From today you are my only wife." He swallowed hard, his atoms, apple bobbing subtly, his eyelashes trembling slightly from suppressed emotion. "I wish to have a heart that is mine alone and never be parted until white-haired." Moved, Mu Lan accepted the cup, extended her delicate hand, intertwined arms with the prince, and they gazed into each other's eyes as they drank the nuptial wine. "My husband, through life and death I vow to you. I hold your hand and grow old with you."